In this video series, we're going to be going through all the chapters of A Storm of Swords in vertical footage, since there is no graphic novel for us to use to make an animated comic book like the other series we have. This is the third video in this series and will cover chapters 28 to 41. Our first video covered the first 13 chapters of A Storm of Swords, and the next one covered chapters 14 to 27. If you haven't seen either of those previous videos, we suggest watching them first and then coming back to this video. We will also be using character icons throughout the video to help emphasize who is being talked about throughout the chapters. Anyway, let's continue with Sansa III. A Storm of Swords, Sansa III. On the day Sansa is to receive her new outfit, the attendants fill her bathtub with hot water and meticulously cleanse her until her complexion turns pink. Cersei and the dressmaker watch as Sansa is fitted into her new outfit. Once dressed, the dressmaker compliments Sansa's stunning appearance. Sansa, thrilled with her appearance, giggles and spins, letting her skirt swirl around her. She eagerly anticipates impressing Willis, hoping to make him forget Winterfell with her charm. As Cersei's maid adorns Sansa with gems, Cersei remarks on Sansa's beauty. "You are a lovely girl. It seems almost obscene to squander such sweet innocence on that gargoyle." What gargoyle? Sansa did not understand. Did she mean Willis? How could she know? No one knew but her and Marjorie and the Queen of Thorns. Oh, and Dantos, but he didn't count. Cersei Lannister ignored the question. "The cloak," she commanded. A fierce direwolf was embroidered upon it. Sansa looked at it with sudden dread. A maiden's cloak. Sansa's hand went to her throat. "You're prettier with your mouth closed, Sansa," Cersei told her. "Come along now, the Septon and wedding guests are waiting." "No," Sansa blurted. "No." "Yes. You are a ward of the crown. The king stands in your father's place. Since your brother is an untainted traitor, you are to marry my brother, Tyrion." My claim, she thought, sickened. Dantos the fool was not so foolish after all. He had seen the truth of it. "I won't. I'm to marry Willis. I'm to be the Lady of Highgarden, please. I understand your reluctance. Cry if you must. In your place, I would likely rip my hair out. He's a loathsome little imp, no doubt of it. But marry him you shall. You can't make me." "Of course we can. You may come along quietly and say your vows as befits a lady, or you may struggle and scream and make a spectacle for the stable boys to titter over. But you will end up wedded and bedded all the same." The Queen opened the door. Sir Meryn Trant and Sir Osmond Kettleback were waiting in the white scale armor of the Kingsguard. "Escort Lady Sansa to the sept," she told them. "Carry her if you must, but try not to tear the gown. It was very costly." Sansa tried to run, but Cersei's handmaid caught her before she'd gone a yard. Sir Meryn Trant gave her a look that made her cringe. But Kettleback touched her almost gently and said, "Do as you're told, sweetling. It won't be so bad. Wolves are supposed to be brave, aren't they?" Brave. Sansa took a deep breath. "I am a Stark. Yes, I can be brave." She remembered when Joffrey had Sir Boris Blount tear her clothes off. It had been the imp who saved her from a beating that day. The same man who was waiting for her now. "He is not so bad as the rest of them," she told herself. "I'll go." Cersei smiled. "I knew you would." At the wedding, Joffrey prepares to give her away. "I'm your father today," he announced. "You're not," she flared. "You'll never be." His face darkened. "I am. I'm your father and I can marry you to whoever I like. To anyone. You'll marry the pig boy if I say so, and bed down with him in the sty. Or maybe I should give you to Ilyn Payne. Would you like him better?" Her heart lurched. "Please, your grace," she begged. "If you ever loved me, even a little bit, don't make me marry your..." "Uncle?" Tyrion Lannister stepped through the doors of the sept. "Your Grace," he said to Joffrey, "grant me a moment alone with Lady Sansa, if you would be so kind." The king was about to refuse, but his mother gave him a sharp look. They drew off a few feet. The gash across Tyrion's face was raw and red, and his nose was a hideous scab. "You are very beautiful, Sansa," he told her. "It is good of you to say so, my lord." She did not know what else to say. Should I tell him he is handsome? He'll think me a fool or a liar. She lowered her gaze and held her tongue. "My lady, this is no way to bring you to your wedding. I am sorry for that, and for making this so sudden and so secret. My lord father felt it necessary for reasons of state. Else I would have come to you sooner, as I wished." He waddled closer. "You did not ask for this marriage, I know. No more than I did. If I had refused you, however, they would have wed you to my cousin Lancel. Perhaps you would prefer that. He is nearer your age and fairer to look upon. If that is your wish, say so, and I will end this farce." "I don't want any Lannister," she wanted to say. "I want Willis. I want Highgarden and the Barge, and sons named Eddard and Bran and Rickon." But then she remembered what Dantas had told her in the Godswood. "Tyrell or Lannister, it makes no matter. It's not me they want, only my claim." "You are kind, my lord," she said, defeated. "I am a ward of the throne, and my duty is to marry as the king commands." He studied her with his mismatched eyes. "I know I am not the sort of husband young girls dream of, Sansa," he said softly, "but neither am I Joffrey." "No," she said. "You were kind to me, I remember." Tyrion offered her a thick, blunt-fingered hand. "Come then, let us do our duty." Tyrion leads her to the altar where the Septon stands ready to marry them. She notices Dantas in his jester's outfit. Sir Balon Swan and Sir Boris Blount are present, but none of the Tyrells, including Sir Loras, are there. Despite their absence, the ceremony has many witnesses, including Varys, Sir Adam Marbrand, Lord Philip Foote, Sir Bronn, Lord Giles, Lady Emersand, and Lady Tanda's pregnant daughter. Sansa can rarely recall the ceremony. Acting as her father, Joffrey steps up to Sansa. His hand inappropriately touches her before he finally unclasps the cloak. When his turn comes, Tyrion struggles with his part during the ceremony. He is meant to cloak Sansa with a heavy, crimson velvet cloak of House Lannister. However, the significant height difference between them complicates the moment. Feeling a pull on her skirt, Sansa realizes Tyrion wants her to kneel, but feeling humiliated by the awkwardness of the situation, she resists. Amidst whispered laughter from the crowd, Joffrey cruelly instructs Dantas the Fool to kneel so Tyrion can stand on his back to reach. This spectacle deepens Sansa's humiliation, yet when she finally turns to face Tyrion, seeing his embarrassed yet sincere expression softens her resolve. She kneels to meet him at eye level, and they exchange vows and a brief kiss. Tyrion's face comes close to hers, and Sansa can't help but compare his appearance unfavorably to even the Hound's, thinking him profoundly unattractive. The wedding festivity unfolds in the small hall. During the banquet, Sansa encounters the Tyrells again. Marjorie greets her with a gaze full of pity, while the Queen of Thorns deliberately avoids any eye contact. Eleanor, Alla, and Mega, once considered friends, now seem to disavow her presence, deepening Sansa's sense of abandonment and solitude. At the feast, Tyrion drinks copiously but eats little. Sansa envisions the bedding ceremony, the boisterous crowd undressing her and Tyrion while making crude remarks as they escort them. The thought puts her on the verge of tears. As the music starts, Sansa hesitantly suggests to Tyrion that they lead the dance, but he declines. Instead, Joffrey and Marjorie take the floor, prompting Sansa to marvel at Joffrey's graceful dancing despite his monstrous nature. The dance floor soon fills with other guests. Eleanor, Mega, and Prince Tommen, Lady Merryweather, Lord and Lady Tyrell, Kevin Lannister with Lady Janna Fossaway, Merry Crane, and Jalaba Zoe. Cersei cycles through partners, dancing with Lords Redwyn and Rowan before joining her father, who moves with practiced, though stern, elegance. Sansa watches Cersei charming the crowd and feels a surge of resentment. When Garland Tyrell approaches, asking her to dance with her husband's approval, Tyrion nonchalantly agrees. Eager to dance, Sansa accepts Sir Garland's offer. Sansa finds herself laughing at his stories, a moment of lightness that briefly lifts her spirits. As they dance, Sir Garland shares his wife Lynette's concerns for Sansa. Sansa claims her tears are of joy, but Sir Garland gently suggests otherwise, praising Tyrion as a man of greater substance than he appears, and implying that he will prove to be a good husband. She soon finds herself dancing with Mace Tyrell, Lord Merryweather, Prince Tommen, who eagerly shares his desire to marry and boasts about being taller than Tyrion, Sir Kevan, who compliments her beauty, Jalabhar Zoe, Lord Redwyn. Suddenly, the atmosphere changes as Joffrey becomes her next dance partner. Joffrey pulls her closer, promising a continuous relationship with her despite his engagement to Margaery. He crudely hints that Tyrion would facilitate their illicit meetings. Sansa rejects this. As the dance partners rotate again, Sansa finds herself with Lord Rowan and Sir Talad. Her legs feel as stiff as wood due to the stress, but she is rescued by Sir Garland once more. Sansa's relief evaporated as the music stops, with Joffrey eagerly announcing the start of the bedding ceremony, urging the crowd to undress her for inspection. The call was enthusiastically echoed by others. A visibly upset Tyrion swiftly puts a stop to the proceedings, declaring there will be no bedding ceremony. Joffrey, undeterred, grabs Sansa's arm, asserting his authority. In retaliation, Tyrion stabs his dagger into the table, the blade quivering as he threatens to cut off Joffrey's manhood if he insists. The room falls into a stunned silence. Queen Cersei turned to her father. "Did you hear him?" Lord Tywin rose from his seat. "I believe we can dispense with the bedding. Tyrion, I am certain you did not mean to threaten the king's royal person." "I misspoke," Tyrion said. "It was a bad jape, sire." "You threatened to geld me," Joffrey said shrilly. "I did, your grace," said Tyrion, "but only because I envied your royal manhood. My own is so small and stunted, and if you take my tongue, you will leave me no way at all to pleasure this sweet wife you gave me." Laughter burst from the lips of Sir Osmond Kettleback. Someone else sniggered, but Joff did not laugh, nor Lord Tywin. "Your grace," Tywin said, "my son is drunk. You can see that." "I am," the imp confessed, "but not so drunk that I cannot attend to my own bedding." He hopped down from the dais and grabbed Sansa roughly. "Come, wife, time to smash your portcullis." Red-faced, Sansa went with him from the small hall. They reach a breezy chamber high in the Tower of the Hand. Tyrion firmly shuts the door behind them and requests Sansa to pour him some Arbor Gold from the bedside table, noting that while he isn't very drunk, he intends to be. Sansa fills a goblet for each, thinking it might be simpler if she too were intoxicated. She drinks and feels dizzy. She inquires if Tyrion wants her to undress. Tyrion reminds her gently of his first name. Sansa asks again whether she should remove her gown herself or if he prefers to do it, taking another drink of wine. Tyrion turns away, reflecting on his previous marriage. He shares a story with Sansa, telling her about his previous simple wedding with only a drunken septon and pigs for witnesses. He nostalgically recounts how Tysha fed him cracklings, leading to playful moments and laughter as they headed to bed. Surprised, Sansa acknowledges she had not remembered he was wed before. Tyrion clarifies that she hadn't forgotten. She had never known. Intrigued despite herself, Sansa inquires about his former wife. Tyrion's face contorts as he refers to Lady Tysha of the House Silverfist. After a long pause, he inquires Sansa of her age, and she tells him she is turning 13. Tyrion calls upon the gods for mercy before telling her talking will not make Sansa grow older, so they should proceed to do their duty, if it is okay with her. When she answers Tyrion in a safe manner, telling him she aims to please him, Tyrion becomes irritated. He notes how she hides behind her courtesy, and Sansa replies that courtesy is a lady's armor. Tyrion reminds her that they are married, thus she can remove her armor. Sansa inquires if he also wants her to remove her clothing, and Tyrion agrees. Sansa shakes and keeps her head down as she goes to remove her garments, standing bare before him. She sees him looking at her with hunger in one eye and fury in another, confusing her which emotion is making her more scared. Tyrion confronts his feelings openly with Sansa, admitting he desires her despite acknowledging her youth. He expresses his fears about his own appearance and how it might frighten her. He explains that in the absence of light, his physical deformities do not set him apart from other men, likening himself to Loras in the dark. He then lists his positive traits, including his intelligence, bravery, loyalty, and rare kindness traits he believes could make him a good partner to Sansa despite the notorious reputation of his family. He is as frightened as I am, Sansa realized. Perhaps that should have made her feel more kindly toward him, but it did not. All she felt was pity, and pity was death to desire. When Tyrion sees that Sansa won't respond, he finishes his wine and directs her to get into bed so they can fulfill their marital obligations. Obediently, Sansa climbs onto the bed. As she starts to pull up a blanket to cover herself, Tyrion stops her with a firm no. Feeling the chill, Sansa shivers but follows through with Tyrion's directive. She shuts her eyes, tensing up as she listens to the sounds of him removing his boots and shedding his clothes. When Tyrion climbs onto the bed and touches her, Sansa's reaction is an involuntary shudder. Lying there, eyes still closed and body rigid, she is filled with apprehension about what might happen next. Whether he might touch or kiss her again, or if she should prepare herself further. Tyrion tells her to open her eyes. She sees him naked, his physical deformities are apparent, and she notices the normalcy of his manhood. Tyrion gently addresses Sansa, acknowledging her beauty, but expressing his inability to proceed with consummating their marriage due to his respect for her feelings. He offers to wait, be it a month, a year, or even longer, until she feels comfortable and perhaps trusts him more. His attempt at a reassuring smile fails to overcome his disfigured appearance, making him appear more unsettling. Sansa, trying to see past his deformities, searches for some aspect of beauty in him, recalling her scepter's teachings that all men possess some beauty. However, she finds herself overwhelmed by his ugliness. Tyrion promises not to touch her until she desires it, emphasizing his sincerity with his honor as a Lannister. Summoning all her bravery, Sansa asks what would happen if she never desires him. His pained reaction to a straightforward question leads him to mention that there are other options for imps like him. Hurt and resigned, he leaves the bed. A Storm of Swords, Chapter 29. Arya V. Arya observes Stony Sept, the largest town she's seen after King's Landing. As they approach the gate, Harwin recounts how her father once achieved a significant victory here. He explains that during Robert's rebellion, the Mad King's forces pursued Robert, attempting to capture him before he could reunite with Eddard Stark. Robert, injured and hiding with allies, faced imminent capture when Lord Jon Connington, the Hand of the King, seized Stony Sept and initiated a thorough search. However, Lord Eddard and Arya's grandfather, Hostor, launched an assault on the town. Connington fiercely defended, leading to intense fighting throughout the streets and even on rooftops, with Septons ringing bells to alert the townsfolk to take shelter. As the bells tolled, Robert emerged from hiding to join the fray, reputedly killing 6 men, including Miles Mouton, a notable knight once squire to Prince Rhaegar. Though he nearly confronted Connington, fate kept them apart. Connington wounded Lord Hoster Tully and killed Sir Denys Arryn, but ultimately retreated when defeat became inevitable. The clash became known as the Battle of the Bells, a victory Robert credited to Eddard despite his own feats. Arya notices that Stony Sept bears the mark of recent attacks, with new wooden gates replacing older ones that were evidently destroyed. Though the town remains firmly secured right now. Once inside, Tom asks about their food supplies. The captain responds that they are faring better than before. He mentions those arriving are hunting for Jaime Lannister. Lem, hearing this, wonders aloud if this means that Lord Hoster Tully has passed away. The captain confirms that Lord Hoster is either deceased or nearing the end, and speculates that Jaime Lannister might be heading towards the Blackwater River, as it provides the fastest route to King's Landing. As they travel along the streets, Arya rides between Harwin and Anguy. Arya sees no townsfolk around. Curious if everyone has perished, she questions Anguy, who explains that the people are simply hiding. He points out archers positioned on a rooftop and young boys concealed among the ruins. As they continue, a baker opens his window to shout a greeting to Lem, and gradually more townsfolk emerge from hiding. At the center of town, Arya notices iron crow cages containing men, with crows perched around them. Lem, visibly unsettled, asks about the scene, and a woman coldly calls it justice. When Tom inquires if Sir Wilbert ordered it, a nearby man bitterly explains that Sir Wilbert is dead and his sons are off fighting with Robb in the west. Arya realizes they might be Robb's men and asks what they did. The man explains that they had killed 8 people at Tumblr's Falls searching for Jaime Lannister. When they didn't find him, they resorted to and murder. Arya feels a mix of anger, pity, and confusion. She questions how these broken men could be part of her brother's forces. Despite a townsman's attempt to deter her, Arya dismounts and prepares to give them water. The townsman tries to stop her, but Harwin and Lem defend her choice, with Lem pointing out that Lord Beric wouldn't condone such cruelty. She gives water to all the prisoners. Some townsfolk murmur that the mad huntsman will disapprove of her actions. Anguy, unfazed by the crowd's murmurs, strings his longbow, draws an arrow, and shoots the fat prisoner. The arrow drives through the man's chin, but the cage holds him upright. Anguy then swiftly ends the lives of the 2 remaining prisoners, leaving the market square in heavy silence. Arya reflects grimly, thinking, Vala Margulis. The group arrives at a simple inn. A sign above the door shows a bitten peach. At the stables, Greenbeard loudly calls for grooms, and they're quickly greeted by Tansy, the red-haired innkeeper, who cheerfully mocks each of them. She teases Greenbeard, jests with Lem, and calls Tom out for fathering a son. Noticing Gendry, she playfully pinches his cheek, making him blush as she hints that her daughter Alice might be interested in him. When Tom asks for a safe place to sleep, Tansy agrees but insists that they all bathe first. When the bath ordeal is over, Arya is finally allowed to go downstairs and join the others for dinner, relieved to be among them again. As Arya sits in the common room, she recalls Syria Farrell's lesson about observing carefully. She notices an unusual number of young, attractive serving girls and realizes by evening, as men come and go quickly upstairs, that this inn might be a brothel. She whispers her suspicion to Gendry, comparing it to an inn but with women. Embarrassed, Gendry doubts she really knows what a brothel is. When she insists she does, he retorts that such a place is no fit place for a highborn lady. One of the women, Bella, overhears and mockingly calls herself a king's daughter, claiming her mother was one of King Robert's favorites during his time hiding there. Arya, noticing Bella's thick black hair, briefly thinks of Robert but dismisses it, reasoning that many people have dark hair. Bella introduces herself to Gendry, flirtatiously offering him a free experience as a friend of Thoros and the Lightning Lord, but Gendry refuses and abruptly leaves, which if he didn't, would have been incest. After he storms off, Bella asks Arya if he dislikes girls, but Arya dismisses him as foolish, saying he's only interested in his work as a smith. Bella soon moves on to Jack Be Lucky, while the other outlaws pair off with the women. Though tempted to escape and steal a horse, she knows it would be futile. As Arya's cup empties, she notes that Gendry hasn't returned. Tom Seven Strings sings, while Lem and Harwin quietly converse with Tansy in a corner. Arya overhears Tansy claiming that Lady Catelyn supposedly spent a night in Jaime Lannister's cell with the woman who killed Renly and later freed Jaime out of love. Arya feels a pang of disbelief, unable to accept that her mother would do something like this, leaving her feeling sad and isolated. Suddenly, an old drunk sits beside her, leering and calling her a pretty little peach. His breath foul as he asks her name. Caught off guard, Arya hesitates, unsure which identity to use. Before she can respond, Gendry appears, placing a firm hand on the man's shoulder and claiming Arya as his sister. Intimidated, the man backs off, muttering that he would never bring his own sister to a place like this. After the man leaves, Arya angrily asks why Gendry called her his sister, pointing out that they aren't related. Irritated, Gendry retorts that he's too low-born to be her kin, accusing her of looking down on him. Surprised by his anger, Arya tries to explain that she didn't mean it that way, but he cuts her off, saying he wants to drink in peace and plans to visit Bella afterward. Hurt and frustrated, Arya walks away, thinking of how stupid Gendry is and trying to convince herself that it doesn't matter what he does. As she lies in her bed, Arya mutters her list of names into the pillow: Cersei, Joffrey, Ilyn, Meryn, Dunsen, Raff, Polliver, the Tickler, the Hound, and Gregor, mixing the order to keep each one of their deeds fresh in her mind. She wonders if any of them are already dead. Sleep overtakes Arya the moment she closes her eyes. She has a wolf dream where she wargs Nymeria. At dawn, Arya awakens to the loud soft of barking. Gendry stirs beside her. She crawls out from the bed and steps over Lem, Tom, and Jack B. Lucky to reach the window. Arya watches as the townspeople open the cage of the fat man's body, dragging it out and letting it fall. Immediately, the dogs swarm it, tearing pieces of flesh from the bones. Arya listens as one of the riders mocks the captives, calling him a Lannister bastard. Gendry joins Arya at the window, while Tom, undressed, peers over their shoulders. Tom suggests finding both Greenbeard and Archer, as the mad huntsman has returned with another captive for the cages. Hearing the word Lannister, Arya thinks they may have caught the Kingslayer. Gendry wonders the same, but as a stone strikes the prisoner's face, Arya realizes it isn't Jaime. When she sees his face, a sense of satisfaction fills her, believing the gods have finally answered her prayers. It is the Hound. A Storm of Swords, Chapter 30. Jon IV. As the wildlings lead their horses out of the cave, the wall rises before them, gleaming faintly. 24 men are sent by the Magnar, with 12 riding west and the others east, tasked to scout for Night's Watch rangers in the woods or on the walls. Meanwhile, the other wildlings gather behind Jarl, accompanied by Jon and Ygritte. The wall is commonly described as standing 700 feet high, but Jarl identifies a spot where it varies. Here, although the peak of the wall rises 800 feet above the forest ground, roughly a third of this elevation is made of earth and stone instead of ice. The area is also thickly forested, providing plenty of cover. In the past, members of the Night's Watch would regularly cut back the advancing trees, but now, with lesser men, the forest has greatly advanced. As the day progresses, Jon observes the Thenns' hesitance. None of them, including the Magnar, have ever seen the wall, and it terrifies them. The belief in the Seven Kingdoms that the wall represents the end of the world holds a similar significance for the Thenns. Jon contemplates his own position. To remain with Ygritte, he would need to adopt the wildling lifestyle completely. Leaving her to return to his duties risks her harm by the Magnar. Conversely, if he persuades her to accompany him, though her agreement is uncertain, he cannot bring her to the Night's Watch at Castle Black. Jon knows a wildling and a turncloak have no place in the Seven Kingdoms. Jon observes that the wall doesn't intimidate Jarl's raiders. They are seasoned. As they dismount under the ridge, Jarl summons 11 of his men by name, gathering them close. All are young, the eldest barely 25, and 2 are even younger than Jon. Yet each exhibits a lean, rugged hardness reminiscent of Stone Snake, the Night's Watch brother who Qhorin Halfhand dispatched on foot to evade Rattleshirt's pursuit. Beneath the towering wall, the wildlings prepare to ascend. The 11 climbers and Jarl split into 3 groups of 4. Ygritte spots the climbers, and Jon sees Jarl appear above the treetops. Jon laments the Night's Watch oversight that allowed trees to grow so near the wall. Jarl then transitions from wood to wall, meticulously chipping handholds with his ice axe before swinging onto the ice. With a rope around his waist connecting him to the second climber, Jarl cautiously ascends, forming toe holds with his spiked boots. Lacking the helpful trees that boosted Jarl's group, the remaining two teams struggle with the initial climb, causing some Thenns to suspect they veered off course. While Jarl and his team are already 80 feet upward, the leaders of the other groups just start to appear. Watching their gradual ascent, the Magnar expresses his frustration loudly, criticizing the slow pace and anxious about the Night's Watch spotting them. Despite recognizing the wildlings' valor in facing such hazards, Jon silently wishes for a Night's Watch patrol to encounter and disrupt the climbers' ascent. Recalling his father's teaching that no wall is impregnable without vigilant defenders, Jon notes that although the wildlings number over 100, just a few determined guards could repel them with arrows and stones. But no defenders come to intercept the wildlings. As the sun ascends, so do the climbers. Jarl's group initially leads until they encounter unstable ice around noon. The incident allows Greg, the goat's team, to nearly catch up as Jarl's group recovers. Meanwhile, Eric's team lags significantly behind. The areas Eric's group climbs appears smooth and unblemished. In contrast, the section Greg ascends is more rough and easier to climb. After a brief recovery, Jarl and Greg's team resume climbing, closely matched in progress, while Eric's group remains 50 feet behind. As hours pass, Jon observes their struggle, sharing the Magnar's anxious wait for any signs of the Night's Watch, but all remain quiet. 6 hours into the climb, Jarl again outpaces Greg the goat, widening their lead. The Magnar jest that Jarl is eager for Mance's reward. Suddenly, Jon hears a crack rip the air. Followed by cries of alarm, a massive sheet of ice, 1 foot thick and 50 feet across, shears away from the wall, hurtling downwards. Debris rains down even to the ridge's base, where Jon quickly shields Ygritte, and a Thenn suffers a broken nose from a flying ice shard. Looking up after the chaos, they see no trace of Jarl and his team beyond 600 feet, leaving a smooth, marble-like scar on the wall. Below, a faint red mark stains the ice where a climber met a brutal end. As he assists Ygritte to her feet, Jon reflects on how the wall protects itself. They come upon Jarl, lifeless and skewered on a broken tree branch, still connected by ropes to 3 men below him, 2 deceased and 1 critically injured. This survivor requests mercy as they approach. A Thenn promptly crushes his skull with a large stone mace. The Magnar then instructs his men to collect the deceased for burning. The dead are aflame when Greg the goat arrives at the summit of the wall. When Eric's group reaches the top, only bone and ash are left of Jarl and his team. As the sun begins to set, the climbers quickly set to work. They uncoil the long hemp ropes wrapped around their chests, tie them together and drop one end down. While the prospect of climbing 500 feet of rope daunts Jon, Mance has devised a more practical plan. The raiders left below uncover a massive ladder with thick hemp rungs and attach it to the climber's rope. In total, they haul up 5 ladders. Once the ladders are securely in place, the Magnar orders 5 Thenns to begin their ascent. Despite the ladders, the climb remains challenging. Ygritte observes their efforts for a time before expressing her disdain for the wall, noting the wall is in fact made from blood, not ice. As the sun sets, the wall claims the lives of 2 Thenns who plummet from the ladder, marking the last deaths of the day. Close to midnight, Jon finally reaches the top. The night sky is clear and Ygritte shivers from the effort of the climb, her eyes filled with tears. She confides in Jon that she nearly lost her grip several times, feeling as if the wall was trying to dislodge her. Jon attempts to comfort her. However, Ygritte forcefully rejects his comfort, pushing him back and insisting that her tears are not out of fear. Angrily, she expresses her frustration over their failure to find the Horn of Winter, despite having disturbed many graves in their quest. She believes finding the Whore of Joramun would have allowed them to destroy the wall. A Storm of Swords, Chapter 31. Jaime IV. Jaime's hand still burns, even though the fire used to cauterize the wound had long gone out. Days later, the phantom pain lingers, a kind of agony he's never felt before. He recalls childhood prayers he once recited with Cersei at Castle Rock, prayers he hasn't thought of in years. At times, he cries, but the sound of Murmur's laughter forces him to dry his eyes and harden his heart. He finally understands what Tyrion must have felt every time people made rude jokes about his appearance. Following his second tumble from the mount, they secured Jaime firmly alongside Brienne on the same horse. Urswick has his severed hand hung around his neck, making it swing between him and Brienne as he keeps fainting and waking. Jaime's throat is too sore to consume food, yet he consumes wine or water. On one occasion, he eagerly gulps down from a cup they gave him, shivering. The brave companions explode into laughter, revealing to him it's horse urine he's consuming. They compel Brienne to rinse the vomit from his beard and manage his cleanliness when he soils himself while riding. On a brisk, damp morning, as Jaime felt somewhat stronger, a rash impulse led him to grasp the Dornishman's blade with his remaining hand, pulling it from its holder. Determined to die with the sword in hand and in battle, his efforts were in vain. Shagwell skillfully dodged Jaime's awkward swings. After tripping on a stone and kneeling, Jaime is thrown aside by Rourke, who then kicks the sword from his weak grip as he attempts to raise it. Vargo Hoat, amused by the incident, warns Jaime that he might lose his other hand or even a foot if he tries again. Afterward, Jaime is defeated. Brienne whispers Jaime's name. She asks him what he's doing, and he responds that he's dying. Brienne urges him to live, but Jaime, feeling a mix of amusement and defiance, tells her not to command him and asserts that he will die if he chooses to. She asks him if he's a coward. The word coward surprises Jaime. He thinks of who he is, a knight of the Kingsguard, the King's Slayer, and realizes he's been called so many names, including Oathbreaker, Murderer, Cruel, and Reckless, but he's never been called a coward. He questions what else there is for him to do but perish. Brienne encourages him to survive and to seek retribution. Jaime contemplates his identity now that he has lost his sword hand, wondering if he has ever been more than just that. Jaime realizes Brienne is right. Surrendering to death isn't an option. Cersei and Tyrion are waiting for his return, and his enemies are also anticipating his next move. These include Robb, who defeated him and his men in the Whispering Woods, Edmure Tully, who imprisoned him, and the brave companions who currently hold them captive. With the arrival of morning, Jaime pushes himself to consume the oatmeal presented to him and live for Cersei, for Tyrion, and for retribution. A Lannister always pays his debts. He resolves to commission a golden hand once he reaches King's Landing, envisioning it as a tool for wreaking vengeance on Vargo Hoat. Days and nights fused into a relentless blur of agony for Jaime. Brienne is always bound beside him, lying silent and still, resembling a lifeless animal. Jaime believes she has built a mental fortress, shielding her inner self in preparation for the inevitable assault. He hears Urswick mention Harrenhal as their destination and laughs loud, prompting Timon to strike Jaime's face with a whip. That night, Brienne asks what amused him. Jaime explains it was at Harrenhal he earned his white cloak during Went's tournament. At 15, he was confident no one could defeat him, but King Aerys barred him from competing and sent him away. The next night, 3 of their most brutal captors approach: Shagwell, the noseless Rourke, and Zolo, the Dothraki responsible for severing Jaime's hand. As they close in on Brienne, Zolo and Rourke argue over who will have her first. Shagwell suggests they both take her at the same time, one from the front and one from behind. an idea that pleases them but leads to a fight over who gets which position. Jaime realizes the men will leave Brienne broken in ways that won't show. As Xolo and Rogue argue, he whispers to her, urging her to let them have their way. Brienne, defiant, responds that they will find no pleasure in what she offers. Jaime thinks her bravery is foolish and self-destructive, frustrated by her stubbornness, which he blames for his lost hand. Yet he urges her again to escape mentally, reflecting on how he had done the same when witnessing the deaths of Lord Rickard and Brandon Stark. Rogue ends the argument, threatening Brienne with mutilation if she fights back or screams, while Shagwell mockingly eggs him on, making crude and vile remarks. Jaime interrupts with a loud shout of sapphires, intending to disrupt their plans. Cursing, Rogue kicks Jaime's stump again, sending a surge of agony so intense that Jaime howls before blacking out. When he regains consciousness, he sees Urswick and Vargo Hoat. Hoat, furious, spits as he yells that Brienne must remain untouched, declaring her worth a fortune in sapphires. From that point on, guards are placed to protect her from the other captors. 2 nights later, Brienne cautiously asks why Jaime shouted. He makes a joke of it, but nonetheless, Brienne thanks him. Jaime, his hand throbbing, replies that he owes her for the river and the rock she dropped to help them escape Robin Rhaegar and his men. Vargo Hoat, eager to make a spectacle, forces Jaime to dismount a mile from Harrenhal's gates. A rope is tied around Jaime's waist and another around Brienne's wrists. They trudge side by side as they approach the looming walls of Harrenhal. Brienne grips Jaime's arm and mentions that Lord Bolton, loyal to the Starks, commands the castle. Jaime recalls the Boltons' notorious practice of flaying their enemies. He thinks of Tyrion, who would likely know everything about the Lord of the Dreadfoot, but Tyrion is far away with Cersei. Jaime looks to the lakeshore where Lord Went once hosted his grand tourney during the false spring. He recalls how swiftly the honor turned sour. Aerys granted him the White Cloak only to humiliate him soon after. Brienne notes the banners above the gatehouse, the flayed man, the twin towers, and the direwolf of King Rob's allies. As they move through the camps, soldiers, servants, and onlookers mock them loudly. Vargo Hoat loudly announces Jaime, and a spear abruptly strikes Jaime's back, driving him down into the dirt. Jaime sees 5 knights in fray and a pale-eyed Northman watching from the steps of a massive tower. Recognizing the phrase, Sir Danwell, Sir Aenys, and Sir Hostine, he mocks them with a dry condolence, recalling his family's ties to their house. Jaime informs Sir Darwin Frey of his nephew Cleos's death, explaining how outlaws killed him and Urswick's group looted his body. Brienne seizes the moment, declaring her allegiance to House Stark and pleading for their help. Sir Aenys spits in contempt, accusing Robb Stark of betrayal. Brienne insists she knows of no treachery and explains that Lady Catelyn ordered her to deliver Jaime to King's Landing. Urswick mocks her, claiming she was trying to drown Jaime when they intervened. Brienne, flustered, defends herself, but Sir Aenys is unmoved, sparking debate among the Freys over Jaime's fate. Vargo declares that Jaime belongs to him. Roose Bolton, speaking quietly enough to still the crowd, reminds Hoat that Harrenhal is his only until he marches north. Delirious from fever, Jaime mocks Bolton, recalling how his father once drove him into retreat. Bolton's cold, unreadable gaze unsettles Jaime far more than Hoat's blustering threats. His pale face and piercing eyes bring to mind the moment when Ned Stark found Jaime seated on the Iron Throne. Finally, Bolton breaks his silence with a calm remark about Jaime's missing hand. Jaime coolly remarks that his severed hand is hanging around his neck. Roose Bolton snaps the cord, tosses the hand at Vargo Hoat, and orders it removed, calling it offensive. Hoat gleefully suggests demanding a ransom of 100,000 dragons from Tywin Lannister, threatening to send Jaime back in pieces if unpaid, and delivering him to Karstark afterward for more reward. The brave companions burst into laughter. Bolton calmly dismisses the idea, informing Hoat that Karstark is no longer an option, as Robb Stark executed him for treason and murder. He further explains that Tywin Lannister remains in King's Landing, preparing for his grandson's wedding to a daughter of House Tyrell. Brienne interrupts, insisting that Joffrey is betrothed to Sansa Stark. Bolton corrects her, stating that the Battle of the Blackwater changed everything, uniting House Lannister and House Tyrell after their victory over Stannis Baratheon. Jaime silently reflects on his earlier warning to Urswick and Vargo Hoat, knowing that betting against House Lannister costs more than gold. Aloud, he asks for news of Cersei. Bolton replies that she is well, as is Jaime's nephew, deliberately pausing to imply his knowledge of their true relationship. Bolton adds that Tyrion survived the battle, but was wounded. Bolton orders a Northman to escort Jaime to Qyburn and commands Brienne's hands to be freed. As the rope binding her is cut, Bolton politely apologizes, saying it is difficult to distinguish friend from enemy in times of war. Brienne, rubbing her raw wrists, informs Bolton that the men had attempted to assault her. Bolton fixes his cold gaze on Hoat, expressing his displeasure both at the assault and at what was done to Jaime's hand. The yard is filled with Northmen and Freys, outnumbering the brave companions 5-1. Even Vargo Hoat knows better than to speak against such odds. Brienne mentions the loss of her sword and armor, but Bolton assures her they are unnecessary under his protection at Harrenhal. He orders proper accommodation for Brienne and immediate care for Jaime, then departs without waiting for a reply. Jaime and Brienne share a fleeting glance before being led away separately. Qyburn, a composed, grey-haired man, examines Jaime's infected stump after removing the soiled linen. He suggests amputation as the safest option, but Jaime threatens to kill him if he does. When warned of the severe pain, Jaime insists he will endure it. Accepting a cup of wine instead, he allows Qyburn to strap down his arm to begin the procedure. When Qyburn begins cutting away the infected rotting tissue, despite his determination, Jaime faints. When he regains consciousness, Qyburn is stitching his arm. Jaime weakly comments on Qyburn's apparent skill. Qyburn responds that anyone serving under Vargo Hoat becomes familiar with dealings with amputations. Jaime observes that Qyburn, with his calm demeanor and gentle expression, doesn't seem like someone who would belong among such men. When asked about his presence with the brave companions, Qyburn reveals that the Citadel stripped him of his chain. He then offers to treat the swollen injury above Jaime's eye. Closing his eyes, Jaime lets him. He asks about the battle, knowing Qyburn, as keeper of Harrenhal's ravens, would have the latest news. Qyburn explains that Stannis was trapped between Tywin's forces and wildfire, with Tyrion setting the river ablaze. Jaime envisions green flames consuming the city and hears the scream of burning men, a vision he recognizes from reoccurring dreams. Qyburn prepares to grind herbs for Jaime's fever and advises him to return the next day so he can place a leech on his eye to drain the swelling. When Qyburn notes Bolton's fondness for leeches, Jaime dryly replies that it suits him. A Storm of Swords, Chapter 32. Tyrion IV. As Tyrion passes through the area beyond the King's Gate, which is now just rubble and ashes, he notices people are already starting to repopulate the place selling fish. As he rides by, he senses their hostile stares, feeling that without Bronn's intimidating presence, the crowd might violently turn on him. As they approach the Mudgate, Tyrion decides to cut the inspection short, planning to return the next day with guildmasters to discuss reconstruction. The responsibility of overseeing the reconstruction was initially intended for Kevan Lannister. However, Kevan has been deeply affected by personal tragedy. He learned through a message from Riverrun that his son Willis was killed, while another son, Martin, was taken hostage by Robb Stark. Additionally, his eldest son, Lancel, is suffering from a severe and unhealing wound. Overwhelmed by grief and concern for his remaining endangered sons, Sir Kevan is unable to fulfill his duties. Consequently, Lord Tywin, having no other viable options, reluctantly assigns the task to Tyrion. Tyrion grapples with the daunting costs of rebuilding King's Landing, the realm's main harbour, with Old Town as the only rival. He feels the pressure of securing funds, lamenting the absence of Littlefinger, who has left for the Vale and is now ruling it with Lysa Arryn. Despite the challenges and his father's refusal to acknowledge him as heir to Castle Rock, Tyrion recognizes that Lord Tywin still values his capabilities by entrusting him with Master of Coin. Aside from brats almost hitting Tyrion and Bronn with dung, Tyrion's mood worsens, feeling the weight of his unhappy marriage to Sansa, which remains unconsummated, and the knowledge seems to have spread throughout the castle. Even the stable boys seem to mock him, and he suspects it was possibly due to Sansa confiding in her bedmaids, who are in Cersei's employ, or through Varys' network of informants. Tyrion's disillusionment grows as he reflects on the widespread ridicule regarding his marriage, except from Sansa, who shares his unhappiness. Despite his attempt to offer comfort, he recognizes that no words can change how she sees him. Their relationship is strained further during their nights together, with Tyrion now sleeping clothed due to the evident revulsion Sansa feels towards him. His longing for a genuine connection with her, wishing not only for her land but also for her companionship and happiness, seems impossible. His thoughts drift to Shae. He recalls how he ordered Varys to arrange a secretive meeting with Shae to inform her of his impending marriage. However, to his astonishment, Shae revealed she already knew about his marriage plans, having overheard gossip at the Sept. Despite Tyrion's initial efforts to distance himself during this conversation, Shae dismissed the significance of his marriage to Sansa, seeing her as no real threat to their relationship. She insists he will only get her with child and then she'll be Shae's again. This reaction leaves Tyrion feeling hollow, as he had hoped for a more emotional response from Shae, since Shae's supposed love might be the only love he will ever experience. Tyrion and Bronn sneak off through the narrow streets near Visenia's Hill. Tyrion remains wary, frequently checking to ensure they aren't being followed. Although the street scenes appear typical, Tyrion fears Varys might be watching them. At a narrow alley, too tight for two riders, Tyrion dismounts, ensuring Bronn guards the entrance to prevent anyone from disturbing him. He checks for the gold hidden in his cloak, a significant sum of 30 dragons, before hurrying into the alley, eager to conclude his business. He enters a gloomy, cramped tavern. Tyrion confronts Simon Silvertongue in a dim back room. Simon tries to flatter Tyrion, but Tyrion quickly dismisses his need for more songs. He suggests to Simon Silvertongue that he should travel to the Free Cities, but Simon attempts to showcase his skill by playing a song that is really about Tyrion and Shae's secret relationship, and subtly threatens to share his song with others, namely the Queen or Tyrion's father. Tyrion, unfazed, warns Simon that silence could be more profitable. Understanding the hint, Simon quickly shifts to negotiating his price for silence. He expresses disappointment at not being invited to perform at King Joffrey's upcoming wedding, where a tournament of singers is planned alongside other entertainments. Simon boasts that he could outperform all the invited singers. Tyrion considers the request, but points out the potential awkwardness of altering the planned number of performers so suddenly. Simon Silvertongue, emboldened by the conversation and perhaps the wine, that warns that if left out of the prestigious event, he might debut his new, potentially scandalous song in less illustrious settings. Tyrion reassures him that Bronn will contact him about participating in the event, effectively promising him a place to secure his silence. Simon, satisfied with the arrangement, returns to his harp. Bronn is ready with the horses as Tyrion emerges from the alley. Tyrion instructs him to take Simon to Duskendale, but instead to trick him in 3 days with the news that Hamish the Harper has injured himself, creating an opportunity for Simon to perform. He advises Bronn to tell Simon that he needs new clothes for court, luring him to come willingly. Tyrion darkly suggests that Bronn might want to kill Simon afterward, ensuring that his body is never found, hinting at a gruesome end in a potshop known for its questionable ingredients. Tyrion leaves feeling the need for a cleansing bath, but his relaxation is interrupted by Pod, who informs him of summons from Tyrion's father, Lord Tywin. Irritated, Tyrion is nasty to Pod, to which Bronn humorously chides Tyrion for his harshness towards Podrick. Tyrion enters Lord Tywin's solar and is drawn to inspect Joffrey's wedding gift, a Valyrian steel blade. Tywin explains its importance in countering tales of Stannis' magical sword, emphasizing that a king's weapon must be equally magnificent. Although Valyrian steel is rare and valuable, with thousands still existing globally and approximately 200 within the Seven Kingdoms, House Lannister doesn't currently own one. This fact had long frustrated Lord Tywin. The ancient Lannister kings once possessed such a blade, Brightroar, but it was lost when King Tommen II took it to Valyria on a doomed expedition and never returned. The quest to reclaim Brightroar also led to the disappearance of Tyrion's uncle, Gerion, the boldest and youngest of Tywin's brothers, who vanished 8 years earlier while seeking the lost sword. Lord Tywin had made several attempts to acquire Valyrian longswords from less wealthy noble houses, offering to buy them, but his offers were always turned down. Tyrion examines the blade in the sunlight and asks about the red-black design woven into the sword, especially since the secrets of forging Valyrian steel were lost with the doom of Old Valyria. Gendry's old armorer, Tobbo Moat, explains to Tyrion that he had attempted to infuse the crimson of House Lannister into the metal, but the steel resisted the changes, darkening the red to its current hues and refusing to absorb the color uniformly. Despite his efforts, the red is much darker than intended. The armorer offers to keep trying if the Lannisters are not satisfied, but Lord Tywin accepts the sword as it is. Tyrion expresses a preference for the unintended coloration, noting its unique and foreboding beauty, and suggests that the sword's distinctiveness adds to its value. Surprisingly, the armorer then reveals a second sword. Tyrion examines it, similar yet larger than Joffrey's, as well as thicker and heavier. Both swords have red leather grips and gold lion's head pommels, signifying their Lannister heritage. Tyrion is impressed. He understands immediately that the sword is intended for Jaime when Tywin mentions it's for his son. After Mott leaves, Tyrion, feeling overlooked, sarcastically notes the distribution of swords, one each for Joffrey and Jaime, but none for himself. Dismissing the topic, Tywin shifts the conversation to inquire about Tyrion's findings at the riverfront. Tyrion reports back to Tywin on the dire state of the riverfront following the recent conflict. Tyrion grimly comments on the immense costs involved. Tywin dismisses Tyrion's concerns about the financial strain, instructing him to find the necessary funds. Tyrion retorts that the treasury is depleted, listing the ongoing expenses such as wildfire, his defensive chain, and the lavish plans for Joffrey's wedding, which include an extravagant 77-course feast and entertainment for 1,000 guests. Tywin argues that such displays are crucial to showcase the Lannisters' power and wealth. Tyrion suggests that if so, Castle Rock itself should foot the bill. He criticizes the financial management under Littlefinger, noting that although crown incomes have increased, so have expenses, largely due to Robert's generosity and Littlefinger's substantial borrowing. Tyrion questions whether Tywin would consider forgiving the crown's debts, a notion Tywin quickly dismisses as absurd. He proposes scaling down Joffrey's wedding festivities to manage costs. However, Tywin quickly rejects this idea, concerned that the Tyrells might perceive them as stingy. He insists on maintaining the planned opulence for both the wedding and the waterfront repairs, and firmly tells Tyrion to secure the necessary funds or risk being replaced. Reluctant to face the humiliation of a dismissal, Tyrion commits to finding the money. Tywin then makes a pointed comment about Tyrion finding not just the funds, but also his bed's wife, indicating rumors of Tyrion's strained marriage have reached him. Tyrion responds sarcastically, acknowledging he knows where the bed is. Tywin advises him to better acquaint himself with Sansa. Tyrion suspects that either Varys or Cersei is responsible for infiltrating his private life, particularly annoyed by Cersei's interference given her own scandalous activities. He expresses frustration over Sansa's maids, who are loyal to Cersei, spying on him in his own quarters. Tywin, dismissing the concerns about the maids, focuses on Sansa's maidenhood. Irritated, Tyrion defends his restraint by highlighting Sansa's youth. Tywin, however, views the marriage strategically, emphasizing the importance of confirmation to solidify claims on the north and suggesting that fathering a child with Sansa would nearly secure that prize, reminding Tyrion that an unconsummated marriage could be annulled. Tyrion shifts the topic to Cersei's marriage prospects, which have not been discussed. His father reveals that Mace Tyrell has rejected the proposal to marry Cersei to Willis. Tyrion is amused by this rejection. Sensing it improves his mood, Tywin explains that initially Mace Tyrell was open to the idea, but changed his stance due to his mother's influence. According to Varys, Lady Olenna disparaged Cersei as being too old and worn for her precious grandson. This turn of events leads Tyrion to laugh. Tywin responds to Tyrion's laughter with a stern look, making it clear that Cersei is unaware of the Tyrell's rejection and intends to keep it that way for everyone's sake. He emphatically instructs Tyrion to act as if the marriage proposal to Willis Tyrell was never even made. Tyrion acknowledges the command. Tywin hints at other potential suitors in mind. However, their conversation is interrupted by a knock at the door. A guardsman announces Grand Maester Pycelle, whom Tywin allows to enter. Grand Maester Pycelle enters. He greets Lord Tywin and mentions a new message from Castle Black, suggesting a private discussion. Tywin dismisses the need for privacy, indicating that Tyrion can stay. Pycelle explains that the message is from Bowen Marsh, the castellan of Castle Black, who reports that Lord Mormont has encountered a large movement of wildlings heading south. He further relays that Mormont sent a raven from the haunted forest, indicating they were under attack, and that subsequent birds have returned without messages, leading Marsh to fear the worst for Mormont and his men. Tyrion, who had a fondness for Jorah Mormont, questions the certainty of these grim tidings. Grand Maester Pycelle explains that while there is no definitive proof of Lord Mormont's demise, the absence of any of Mormont's men returning raises serious concern among the Night's Watch that the wildlings may have killed them, and that an attack on the wall could be imminent. Pycelle presents a letter from Bowen Marsh pleading for reinforcements from all claimants to the throne. Tywin, irritated by the reference to multiple kings, instructs Pycelle to remind them that Westeros recognizes only one king, dismissing the others as traitors and pretenders. Pycelle queries about the response to the request for more men. Tywin dismisses the need to convene the council. He suggests that if Mormont is dead, the election of a new Lord Commander could be a chance to instill Janos Slynt as a suitable candidate for Lord Commander, recognizing an opportunity to place a Lannister-aligned leader at the wall. Tyrion is immediately skeptical of the idea. Tywin dismissively explains that the Iron Throne's threat of withholding support from the Night's Watch if they do not comply with their wishes will be enough. Despite Tyrion's objections, Tywin sees Slynt's ambition and susceptibility to influence as advantages, ensuring that Slynt would be loyal to their interests. Tywin instructs Pycelle to send a letter to the Night's Watch, expressing Joffrey's contrived sorrow over Mormont's death, but stating the Crown's inability to send reinforcements while the realm is still unstable. The letter is also to hint that future support could depend on the Night's Watch leadership, clearly nudging them towards electing Slynt. Frustrated, Tyrion reflects on his past decisions, regretting not being harsher with Pycelle and contemplating his missed opportunity to eliminate Slynt permanently. He internally notes his growth in political maneuvering by deciding to have Silver Tongue killed, silently wishing he could show his father just how quickly he is adapting to King's Landing. A Storm of Swords, Chapter 33. Samwell II. Samwell Tarly is torn, unsure which scene unnerves him more, the woman loudly giving birth upstairs or the man dying by the fire beside him downstairs. Craster observes the dying man and coldly suggests that a swift end with a knife would be kinder than attempting to feed him. Bedwick, mockingly called giant despite his short stature, argues with Craster, while Craster retorts, begrudging even the fire he's provided. Clad in rugged, smelly sheepskins and still physically imposing, Craster expresses disdain for the Night's Watch. Around the hall, a handful of Night's Watch brothers sit on benches or the floor, sipping thin onion broth and eating hard bread. The men are increasingly agitated, hungry for days. Clubfoot Carl persistently suggested that Craster must be hiding extra food, a sentiment Garth of Oldtown started to agree with, albeit discreetly away from the Lord Commander. Sam worries if Craster knows about his previous conversation with Gilly about their plan to take her away, or if Craster forced that information out of her. Gilly's labor continues. Annoyed by the noise, Craster shouts for someone to silence her with a rag, threatening to beat her if the noise doesn't stop. Craster was beating one of his young daughters 2 nights ago. Complaints had surfaced among the Night's Watch. Garth of Greenaway said Craster was killing her. Clubfoot Carl made a crew offer for the girl. Black Bernard cursed in anger, and Alan of Roseby left to avoid the scene. Ranger Ronald Harclay reminded them that since it's Craster's house, his rules prevail, and they should remember that Craster is an ally to the Watch. Sam reflects on how they arrived. Craster mocked them but still provided shelter and food, albeit sparingly. When Sam visited Craster's keep for the first time, Gilly approached him for assistance, and he provided his black cloak so she could discreetly seek Jon Snow while concealing her pregnancy. Sam hopes Gilly's baby is a girl. Overwhelmed, Sam leaves the chaos inside Craster's hole. Once outside, Sam notes that while at Craster's there had been no attacks by whites or others, and Craster claims there wouldn't be any. He believed that a godly man has nothing to fear from such forces. He recalled telling Mance Rayder the same thing, but neither Mance nor the Night's Watch heeded his advice. Craster advised them to seek favor with the gods instead, meaning humanity should offer their young to the White Walkers instead. Night's Watch members are practicing archery. Sam sees Sweet Donald and Ulmer, once a member of the Kingswood Brotherhood. Seeking a distraction for Ulmer's stories, Sweet Donald challenges Sam to demonstrate his famed encounter with another. Sam, embarrassed, clarifies that he used a dragonglass dagger, not a bow. He gets ridiculed after trying to fire a bow, and Sam finds Green, to whom he expresses discomfort with his nickname Slayer. Gren, confused, remarks that Sam did indeed slay an other, suggesting the nickname is appropriate. Sam had shared his encounter with everyone, but not all believed him. However, Dywyn and Dolores Ed took him seriously and persuaded Sam and Gren to report the event to Lord Commander Mormont. Mormont, always careful, listened intently and asked many questions to understand fully, but accepted the dragonglass from Sam despite his skepticism. Sam felt a pang of regret when he remembered the large stash of dragonglass Jon had found at the Fist, including numerous weapons and arrowheads, now mostly lost, except for a few pieces they managed to keep. Of the 300 prepared brothers, only 41 exhausted survivors remain, 9 of whom are too injured to fight. Sam questions Gren about whether the whites are truly gone and why they haven't finished off the survivors. Gren optimistically suggests that now they know dragonglass can kill the whites, perhaps the creatures might be afraid to attack. Sam is not sure and misses Jon Snow's company, feeling he could discuss deeper fears and sensitive topics like Gilly's baby with Jon. Mormont, accompanied by Rangers Dwen and Ronald Harclay, is informed they only have 22 horses left and doubts their capability to reach the wall. Mormont acknowledges this but insists they must proceed as Craster has given them no choice. The Lord Commander then spots Sam, calling him over. Mormont, clearly frustrated by Sam's timidness, expresses a desire to discuss Sam's dragonglass further. Mormont questions why they only have 2 daggers made of dragonglass, suggesting that every man should be equipped with one upon joining the Night's Watch. He reflects on the forgotten purpose of the Watch, noting that the wall was built to protect against true threats, not merely wildlings. With some difficulty, Sam tells Mormont that maesters believe dragonglass, or obsidian, forms from volcanic activity, not dragon-made. Mormont, indifferent to its origin, as long as it provides effective, demands more of it. Sam recalls that Jon found a case of dragonglass, which they can no longer reach. Sam mentions that the children of the forest who use dragonglass would know its sources. but Mormont dismisses this, citing the children's extinction by past human conflicts. The discussion is interrupted by Craster, who announces the birth of his son. Craster expresses eagerness for the Night's Watch to leave, showing disdain for the wounded, suggesting they be killed to ease their suffering. Mormont is taken aback, reminding Craster of his supposed friendship with the Watch. Craster retorts, stressing his own hardships. Sam suggests taking Craster's newborn son if Craster is unwilling to care for him. Craster responds angrily. Sam stumbles over his words. Lord Commander Mormont quickly intervenes, scolding Sam and ordering him aside. Once they are away from the others, Mormont chastises Sam for his suggestion. The Night's Watch brother Sam was caring for dies. As the day ends, they conduct a funeral for him, the fallen ranger. Lord Commander Mormont solemnly acknowledges Bannon's service and courage, although he momentarily struggles to recall Bannon's origins, which a brother helps identify as White Harbor. The brothers collectively chant the traditional farewell, and now his watch is ended. Later, upon hearing that his uninvited guests will depart the following day, Craster becomes slightly more congenial. He declares it's about time for them to leave and offers to provide a farewell meal. Craster's wives prepare the meal. Craster occupies the sole chair. Lord Commander Mormont settles next to him while the other Night Watch members pack tightly together on the bench. During the meal, Clubfoot Carl voices his dissatisfaction loudly from down the bench, questioning why only 2 loaves of bread are provided. Mormont, trying to maintain order, sternly advises Carl to be grateful for what they receive. Undeterred by Mormont's rebuke, Carl suggests they should have access to whatever Craster is concealing. Craster defensively claims that he has already provided enough. Dirk, entering the conversation, accuses Craster of having a secret stash of food. Craster begins to defend himself, but Carl cuts him off, labeling him stingy and dishonest. This prompts Garth of Oldtown to speculate about hidden stores of food, recalling the presence of pigs during their last visit. Tensions escalate as the guesses of the food Craster is hiding multiplies. Craster grows visibly agitated, and Mormont stands, demanding silence and dismissing the speculative talk as folly. Despite Mormont's command, Clubfoot Carl challenges him directly, accusing him of ignoring their flight, which prompts a stern reprimand from Mormont to respect his authority. In a tense silence, all eyes focus on the Lord Commander and Clubfoot Carl as they lock gazes across the table. Just as Carl seems ready to reluctantly concede, Craster abruptly stands, his hand gripping the black steel axe. Craster's anger erupts as he refuses to allow those who insult him to remain under his roof or eat at his table. Brandishing the axe, he orders Carl and several others, including Dirk and the 2 Garths, to leave, threatening them with a night in the cold. Suddenly, a curse breaks the silence. One of the Garths calls Craster a bloody bastard, although Sam cannot tell which one. Craster furiously demands to know who insulted him and, in a rage, sweeps the table clear of its contents. Carl, unflinching, responds bluntly, acknowledging Craster's notorious reputation. Craster leaps across the table, axe in hand, as the room erupts with screams and drawn weapons. Carl, stumbling backwards, trips over the wounded Sir Byam. In the midst of his retreat, Craster lunges at him, cursing, only to suddenly start spitting blood. Dirk, seizing the moment, pulls Craster's hair back and savagely cuts his throat. As Craster falls forward onto Sir Byam, who screams in pain, the wildling leader bleeds out. The whole descends into further pandemonium, with 2 of Craster's wives wailing in despair, while another lashes out in fury, only to be knocked down by Sweet Donald. Amidst the turmoil, Mormont stands over Craster's body, proclaiming that the gods will damn them for such treachery in a host hall, citing the sacred laws of hospitality. Dirk, unmoved, seizes one of Craster's wives, demanding she reveal the hidden food under threat of death. Mormont intervenes, threatening Dirk with retribution, but is swiftly blocked by Garth of Greenaway, while Ollo Lophand pulls him back. As Mormont struggles to draw his dagger, Ollo, quick despite having only one hand, stabs the Lord Commander in the belly. Mormont's fall marks the onset of mayhem in Craster's Hall. In the aftermath of the violent outbreak at Craster's Keep, Sam finds himself in a surreal detached state, cradling the dying Lord Commander Mormont's head in his lap. He can barely recall the events that followed Mormont's stabbing, only fragmented memories of chaos and betrayal, including Garth of Greenaway killing Garth of Oldtown and Rolly of Sisterton dying in an ill-fated attempt to approach Craster's wives. Amidst the carnage, Gren had tried to snap Sam back into reality before fleeing with Giant, Dolores Ed, and others. The scene in the hall is one of grim survival. Men consume charred horse meat indifferently, and Olo Lopan callously assaults a weeping woman on the table. Mormont, struggling for breath and bleeding profusely, urges Sam to flee to the wall and deliver crucial messages about everything from their dire situation at the Fist, the threat of the wildlings, and the significance of Dragonglass. Mormont's final thoughts are of his estranged son Jorah, whom he wishes to take the Black as his dying request. Despite Mormont's urgency, Sam feels overwhelmed by despair until a woman's voice interjects. The voice belongs to one of Craster's wives. 3 of them has come up to Sam. Included among them is Gilly, bundled up in furs and cradling her infant. They reveal that the most depraved brothers are currently occupied, either indulging in the cellar or engaging with the younger women in the loft. They strongly advise Sam to make his departure before these men come back. Gilly pleads with Sam, reminding him of his promise to help. However, Sam doubts his ability to help. One of the women points out that Mormont has died, his head still in Sam's lap, his eyes open and unresponsive. Overwhelmed and unsure, the women urge Sam to take Mormont's sword, cloak, and possibly his horse, and flee with Gilly and her child. Gilly's plea intensifies as she offers herself in marriage to Sam if only he would save her son from the ominous fate awaiting Craster's male offspring. The old woman chillingly notes the creeping cold, a sign of the others approaching, and the need for Sam to safeguard Gilly and her newborn. A Storm of Swords, Chapter 34. Arya VI. Arya's vision adjusts to the darkness, but the sudden removal of her hood by Harwin reveals the ruddy glow of a vast underground chamber. A massive fire burns in a pit at the center of the space, its flames dancing towards a soot-stained ceiling. People begin to emerge from the shadows, slipping through the roots, stepping out of black tunnels. When Gendry's hood is removed, he questions the nature of the place. Lem describes it as an ancient hidden refuge. Greenbeard directs Arya's attention to a man by the fire, promising answers. Tom Sevenstrings, who was speaking with a tall, gaunt figure dressed in mismatched old armor, strapped over tattered pink robes. Arya doubts this man is Thoros of Myr, as her memory of the Red Priest was plump, smooth-faced, and bold. This man, in contrast, has a sagging face and a wild mane of grey hair. The focus shifts to the new arrival, leaving Arya and Gendry unnoticed. The hound's wrists are tied with rope, a noose around his neck, and a sack covers his head. Yet his threatening presence fills the cave, and Arya senses it keenly. Thoros approaches the prisoner, asking how the man was caught. The mad huntsman explains that his dogs found the scent while the man was drunk and sleeping under a willow tree. Thoros removes the sack, revealing Sandor Clegane. Sandor recognizes the priest, recalling their past malaise when he cursed Thoros's flaming sword, though Thoros reminded him that he bested Sandor 3 times. Thoros, now gaunt and shaggy, remarks on his transformation. He jokes about needing a tailor to tighten his loose skin, fantasizing about wooing young maidens, to which Sandor retorts that only blind ones would entertain him. The outlaws burst into laughter, Thoros loudest among them, as he declares that he is no longer the false priest Sandor once knew. He claims the Lord of Light has awakened within him, bringing forth long-dormant powers and visions he claims to have seen in his flames. The Hound dismisses Thoros' talk of flames with scorn and mocks those around him. Lem Lemoncoke steps forward, one of the few able to meet Sandor's gaze, warning him to choose his words carefully since they hold his life in their hands. Sandor mocks them for hiding in caves. Angai bristles, pointing out that they fought and bloodied formidable foes, including Sandor's brother. Sandor remains skeptical, calling them swineherds. A voice from the man seated among the weirwood roots recounts how they started as men from various houses to bring the king's justice to Sandor's brother, led by a fool in a starry cloak. Beric is talking about himself. He explains that over 80 of their brothers are gone, but others have taken up the fallen swords. When he reaches the floor, the outlaws make way. Arya notices he has only one eye, with scars around the empty socket. Sandor questions their allegiance to the long-dead king, suggesting they've come underground to keep court for Robert, the King of Worms. Beric acknowledges Robert's death, but insists they remain king's men. He declares that while Robert is gone, the realm still exists, and they fight to defend it. Arya struggles to reconcile Beric's current appearance with the handsome knight Sansa's friend Jean Poole once wanted to marry. The Hound mocks the Brotherhood, claims Robert would have found their mission dull as it involved nothing he could drink, fight, or bed. His taunts provoke outrage among the outlaws, including the Mad Huntsman, Thoros, and Tom Sevenstrings. Clegane dismisses their speeches, urging them to either let him go or kill him, and spare him the moralizing. Thoros promises his death will come, but it will be justice, not murder. The Mad Huntsman agrees, recounting the atrocities committed by lions at the places like Sharer and the Murmur's Ford, where children were brutally murdered and women horrifically violated. The Hound denies involvement, telling the Brotherhood to accuse someone else. Thoros counters, accusing House Clegane of being founded on dead children, referencing the murders of Prince Aegon and Princess Rhaenys during Robert's rebellion. He sarcastically suggests their sigil should feature bloody infants instead of dogs. Sandor angrily asks if he's to be blamed for his brother's crimes or for simply being born a Clegane. Thoros insists murder is a crime, prompting Sandor to demand proof of his guilt. Members of the Brotherhood and others in the cave begin listing the names of those killed by Lannister forces. The Hound dismisses the names as meaningless noise, asserting it was not his sword that killed them, and calling anyone who claims otherwise a liar. Thoros points out his service to the Lannisters, to which Sandor retorts that thousands serve them, and questions whether all are guilty of the crimes committed. As shouting erupts, Sandor dismisses the ideals of knighthood, rejecting their pretense. He accuses them of being no different from him, claiming the only distinction is that he's honest about what he is. Arya suddenly bursts past Greenbeard, accusing Sandor of killing Mycah. The Hound, showing no recognition, asks who Mycah was. Arya angrily clarifies that Mycah was a butcher's boy he killed, saying Jory described how Sandor nearly cut him in half, even though Mycah had no weapon. Sandor realizes who Arya is, identifying her as the girl who threw Joffrey's sword into the river. Laughing, he remarks that she should be dead. Arya snaps back that he is the one who is about to die. Harwin pulls her away as Beric asks Sandor if he denies the killing. Sandor admits to it, but justifies his actions, saying he was protecting Joffrey, claiming Mycah attacked the prince. Arya, furious, calls this a lie, asserting that she was the one who struck Joffrey and threw his sword away, while Mycah only fled as she instructed. Beric questions if Sandor saw the attack, and Sandor replies that he only acted on Joffrey's word, adding that Arya's sister Sansa supported the same version of events when speaking to King Robert. Enraged, Arya accuses Sansa of lying, insisting the truth was different. Thoros pulls Beric aside, and they converse quietly while Arya fumes. When Beric returns, he announces that the truth cannot be determined, so the Lord of Light must decide. He sentences Sandor to trial by battle. Sandor reacts with disbelief, questioning the decision, but Beric calmly states that justice demands this method. He declares that if Sandor proves his innocence through combat, he will earn his freedom. Arya, horrified, tries to cry out in protest, but Harwin silences her by covering her mouth. She panics, certain that the Hound, renowned for his skill with a sword, will win and mock his challenges. Her fears seem confirmed when Sandor bursts into a contemptuous laugh, echoing off the walls. He taunts the Brotherhood, calling for someone to step forward. He mocks Lem Lemoncloak, the Mad Huntsman, and Greenbeard, even suggesting Arya might be sent to face him. Lord Beric Dondarrion calmly declares himself Sandor's opponent. Arya clings to the tale she's heard of Beric's supposed immortality. The Mad Huntsman cuts Sandor's bindings, and the Hound demands his sword and armor. Beric agrees to return his sword, but pointedly remarks that his innocence must serve as his armor. Sandor sneers at the idea, noting the inequality of facing Beric's breastplate with nothing but his innocence. Beric, undeterred, instructs his squire, a boy named Ned, to remove his armor. Arya feels a chill at the mention of her father's name, but quickly realizes this Ned is just a young squire, not her father. As the armor is removed, the rotting padding beneath falls away, exposing Beric's chest and back, which bear matching scars from a lance that once pierced him. Arya, noticing Sandor's reaction, thinks he feels fear. Thoros hands Sandor his sword belt, and Angai will shoot the Hound if he tries to flee or take a hostage. Beric and Thoros pray. The Brotherhood joins in. In response, Beric draws the sword across his palm, letting his blood flow over the blade. The sword bursts into flames. Gendry whispers a prayer, while the Hound curses. He threatens to kill the Red Priest next after dealing with Beric. Lem, Greenbeard, and others hurl insults at Sandor. The fiery glow makes Beric's face appear skeletal. When the Hound finally charges, Beric moves with startling speed to meet him. The Hound's cold steel meets Lord Beric's flaming sword. Sandor's attack comes relentlessly from all directions, but Beric deflects each one. The flames burn brighter with each swing, encasing him in light. Arya asks Gendry if the fire is wildfire, but he denies it, calling it something different. Arya suggests it might be magic. As Sandor retreats, Beric presses the attack. The Brotherhood cheers Beric on. The Hound struggles to hold his ground. Lord Beric relentlessly pursues Sandor, his sword never ceasing. Their blades clash repeatedly. Arya notices a flicker of fear in Sandor's eyes, convincing herself he is going to lose. In a furious assault, Beric drives Sandor back to the fire pit's edge, leaving Arya silently exultant. Beric brings his flaming sword down in a fiery arc. Sandor barely raises his shield in time. Afterward, Gendry quietly notes that Sandor's shield is on fire, and Arya sees it too. Only when Beric steps back does the Hound realize. With a cry of disgust, Sandor tries to cut the shield off his arm. As Sandor struggles, Greenbeard urges Beric to finish him, and the crowd joins in, chanting "guilty." Lord Beric moves in to deliver the final blow. The Hound lifts his sword with both hands and brings it down with all his might. Beric raises his burning blade to block, but the fiery sword shatters and the steel cuts deep into Beric's shoulder and down to his breastbone, unleashing a torrent of dark, streaming blood. Flames still cling to Sandor as he stumbles backwards, tearing away the smoldering remnants of his shield and flinging them aside. The silence beneath the hollow hill is broken only by the crackling of the flames and Sandor's whimpering as he tries to stand. Arya, watching, thinks of Micah and all her unanswered prayers for the Hound's death. Cradling his arm, Sandor pleads for help, tears streaming down his face as he begs. Arya stares in disbelief as Sandor Clegane, known for his brutality, breaks down in tears. Thoros instructs Melly to tend to Sandor's burns, while Lem and Jack B. Lucky help with Lord Beric's body. They lift Beric and carry him towards one of the tunnels, followed by Thoros and Ned. The Mad Huntsman suggests taking Sandor back to the Stony Sept to imprison him, echoing Arya's sentiment that he deserves punishment for killing Micah. Greenbeard comments, but Harwin dismisses it, mentioning that R'hllor has deemed Sandor innocent. In defiance, Arya snatches Greenbeard's dagger and escapes his grasp, eluding Gendry's attempt to catch her as well. Meanwhile, Tom Sevenstrings and a woman help Sandor to his feet. Arya is struck by the sight of his severely burnt arm, the skin cracked and bleeding. When Sandor meets her gaze, he challenges her to end his life, suggesting it would be a mercy compared to dying by fire. As he tries to stand, his skin peels away, causing him to collapse, but Tom supports him, preventing him from falling. Arya gazes at Sandor Clegane, noting the disfigurement of his arm and face, confronts him about Micah, daring him to deny his actions. Sandor admits brutally to killing the butcher's boy and even revels in his cruelty, mentioning he witnessed all the atrocities committed against her family. In a swift motion, Lem grabs Arya's wrist, forcefully taking the dagger from her. Despite her attempts to retrieve it, he holds firm. Frustrated and enraged, Arya screams at Sandor, condemning him to hell. At that moment, a faint voice responds. Arya turns to see Lord Beric Dondarrion miraculously standing despite his severe injuries, supported by Thoros. He softly confirms that the Hound has indeed experienced hell. A Storm of Swords, Chapter 35. Catelyn IV. Catelyn reflects that while the Northern Kings rest in cold underground crypts, the Tullys find their power into it at the end of their days. They position Lord Hoster in a narrow boat with a Tully cloak. In honor of the seven individuals are selected to send Lord Hoster's funeral boat into the river, among them Robb, his primary lord. Accompanying him are Lords Bracken, Blackwood, Vance, Mallister, Sir Mark Piper, and Lame Lothar Frey, who arrives from the twins bearing awaited news. He is escorted by 40 soldiers led by Walder Rivers, Lord Walder's eldest illegitimate son, known for his formidable combat skills. Their timely arrival just hours after Lord Hoster's death infuriates Edmure, who loudly criticizes Walder's Frey choice of representatives as an insult. Catelyn, however, sees Walder Frey's decision as calculated and spiteful, recalling her father's nickname for him, the late Lord Frey. Fortunately, Robb displays more prudence than her brother, welcoming the Freys graciously, providing accommodations for their escort, and discreetly arranging for Sir Desmond Grell to yield his place so Lothar could assist in Lord Hoster's final send-off. Catelyn notes Robb's mature wisdom, understanding the strategic importance of maintaining good relations. Although House Frey may have distanced itself from the king in the north, they remain powerful allies. Catelyn's thoughts turn to her sons, Bran and Rickon, imagining them anticipating Lord Hoster's arrival. The vessel glides through the archway of the water gate, accelerating with the tumblestone swift current. Her uncle Brendan prompts her brother Edmure, now truly Lord Edmure, to prepare his bow. Raising his bow, Edmure pulls the string taut to his ear and releases. The arrow flies upward with a resonant hum. It descends, landing with a quiet sizzle in the river, far behind Lord Hoster's drifting boat. Muttering a curse, Edmure blames the wind as he retrieves another arrow. Edmure lifts his bow, draws the string, and fires. The arrow soars high, but overshoots. Frustration reddens Edmure's neck as he demands another chance and grabs a third arrow. Sir Brendan offers to take the shot, but Edmure refuses. With the third arrow lit, he misses by a mere handspan. Edmure swears in frustration as the boat drifts further away into the mist and out of reach. Silent and seething, he thrusts the bow into his uncle's hands. Sir Brendan swiftly nocks an arrow, releases it before the flames fully catch, and sends it soaring through the mist. The arrow briefly vanishes, but soon a fiery bloom ignites the sail, casting pink and orange hues through the fog. Catelyn reaches out for Edmure, but he has moved away. Brendan takes her hand instead. Brendan tells Catelyn softly that missing a shot is no disgrace, adding that Lord Hoster missed his first arrow when their father went downriver, but got it on the second. The previous night, Edmure, overwhelmed by grief and regret, had broken down. He lamented leaving their father's bedside to fight at the fords. Catelyn thinks that if Edmure hadn't drowned himself in grief and guilt, he might have had the composure to shoot straight. Brendan escorts her from the battlements to where Robb stands among his bannermen, his young queen by his side. Seeing her, Robb silently embraces his mother. Jean softly remarks that Lord Hoster looked regal, lamenting that she never had the chance to know him. Robb adds that he wishes he had known his grandfather better as well. Catelyn's thoughts shift to Lysa, who had not replied to her letter, and the silence from King's Landing troubles her as well. By now, she had hoped Brienne and Sir Cleos would have reached the city with their captive, or perhaps Brienne might already be returning with her daughters. Sir Cleos had promised the imp would send a raven after the exchange. But doubts creep in. Ravens are not always reliable. A hunter might have shot it down. As others approach to offer condolences, Catelyn steps aside as Lord Jason Mallister, the Greatjon, and Sir Rolf Spicer take their turns speaking with Robb. When Lothar Frey approaches, she lightly pulls Robb's sleeve, drawing his attention. Lothar, a stocky man with a leg deformed since birth, greets Robb respectfully. Acting as his father's steward for many years, he requests a meeting later that evening. Robb agrees, expressing his wish to mend the rift between their families, while Queen Jean adds her own apology for any hurt caused. Lothar replies warmly, claiming his father remembers the passion of youth and understands how a heart can be captivated by beauty. Catelyn silently doubts the truth of this sentiment, yet the words are skillfully delivered and Robb accepts them with appreciation. A crowd gathers to speak with Robb, and he addresses each person with polite words and brief smiles. Once they disperse, he talks to Catelyn and asks if she will walk with him. Catelyn agrees, and Robb clarifies it is a request, not an order. She notes his kindness since returning, but understands he prefers Jean's company, as his queen brings him joy while she only offers grief. She also observes how the Westerlings fill the roles of those he has lost, Rollum in Bran's place, and Reynold as a mix of Theon and Jon Snow. With them, Robb smiles and laughs like a boy again, while to others he remains the burdened king in the north. Robb kisses Jean softly, assuring her they will meet later, and walks off with Catelyn toward the Godswood. He comments that Lothar Frey seemed agreeable, but Catelyn warns it doesn't guarantee their support. Robb nods. His slumped shoulders and weary expression show how the crown weighs heavily on him. Reflecting on recent events, she recalls how news of the defeat at Duskendale left Robb stunned rather than angry. The loss of a third of his foot soldiers baffled him, and he questioned why his men had even gone there. Galbert Glover, mourning his captured brother Robert, had expressed despair over losing their home to the Ironborn and his siblings to the Lannisters. Robb, determined, promised to trade Martin Lannister for Robert, trusting Tywin would accept for his nephew's sake. As they walk, Robb expresses regret for not trading Jaime Lannister for Sansa when she had suggested it. He admits that had he acted earlier, he might have secured the Tyrell's alliance by proposing Sansa to marry the Knight of Flowers. Catelyn reassures him that his focus on battles was justified. Robb mutters bitterly that despite winning every battle, he is still losing the war. He laments the Ironborn holding Winterfell and Moat Catelyn, the deaths of his family members, and possibly even Arya. Catelyn cannot let Robb succumb to despair. She reassures him that Ned would have been proud of him. Robb hesitates, then tells her there is something she must know. Sensing his reluctance, Catelyn's thought immediately turned to Brienne and Jaime. He reveals it concerns Sansa. Catelyn assumes the worst, believing Sansa to be dead as Cersei's retribution. Robb, startled, assures her Sansa is alive, but reveals a raven brought word of her marriage to Tyrion Lannister. Catelyn grips his hand tightly, shocked. Catelyn, stunned, recalls Tyrion's promise to trade Sansa and Arya for Jaime. She struggles to understand how he could marry Sansa after such an oath. Robb, brushing the pommel of his sword, condemns Tyrion as an oathbreaker, blaming his bloodline. He bitterly considers that Sansa's only escape may be through widowhood if Tyrion were dead. Catelyn reflects on the moment she captured Tyrion at the inn, lamenting her choice to spare him. She questions why anyone would subject Sansa to such a fate. Robb answers immediately, for Winterfell. With Bran and Rickon presumed dead, Sansa is now his heir. If anything happens to him, she would inherit. Gripping Robb's hand tightly, Catelyn pleads for his safety, insisting she cannot endure another loss. With Ned, her sons, and now her father gone, Robb is all she and the North has left. Robb reassures her that he is not dead yet. But Catelyn, overcome by dread, urges Robb to consider bending the knee, reminding him of Torrhen Stark and Balon Greyjoy, but Robb refuses, arguing that Aegon didn't kill Torrhen's father. His reaction seems more like a defiant boy than a king. She points out that the Lannisters only need homage and hostages, with Sansa already serving that role. The real threat, she explains, comes from the Ironborn, who would need to destroy House Stark entirely to secure their hold on the North. She warns that Balon Greyjoy won't allow Jean to live if she could bear heirs. Robb coldly accuses her of freeing Jaime to seek peace with the Lannisters. Catelyn defends her actions, admitting she had hoped peace might follow. Robb rejects this, reminding her that the Lannisters killed his father, and doubts whether she still remembers. Her anger flares, but she suppresses it. Catelyn pleads for him to value his life above glory. With her request made, she asks to leave, and Robb grants it, turning away. Hours later, Catelyn is sewing in her chamber when Roland Westerling, acting as a diligent squire, brings her a summons to supper. She's relieved, unsure if Robb would want her presence after their earlier disagreement. She praises Roland for his dutifulness, thinking he reminds her of Bran. At the dinner table, Robb is distant and Edmure appears grumpy, but Lothar is the epitome of politeness. He warmly remembers Lord Hoster, offers Catelyn kind words about Bran and Rickon's presumed deaths, commends Edmure for his battle success, and thanks Robb for his decisive actions against Rickard Karstark. In contrast, Walder Rivers, Lothar's half-brother, is dour and mainly focuses on his meal. After the formalities and the meals are over and the Westerlings and the Queen have excused themselves, Lothar clears his throat to address a serious issue. He regrets that he must be the bearer of troubling news, revealing that Lord Walter has received concerning letters from his grandsons in Winterfell. Catelyn, deeply absorbed in her own sorrow, had nearly forgotten about the two Frey boys she had agreed to foster. The thought strikes her painfully. Anticipating more bad news, she forces herself to inquire about the Frey grandsons. Lothar confirms that the boys, Walder and Walder, are currently at the Dreadfort. He reluctantly informs her that Winterfell has been burnt following a battle. Robb, shocked, can hardly believe the news. Lothar explains that the Northern Lords had attempted to reclaim the castle from the Iron Men, leading Theon Greyjoy to burn it as he lost control. Sir Brendan expresses skepticism, having heard nothing of such a battle. Lothar cites a letter from Big Walder, confirmed by his cousin, detailing the violent events, including the death of their castellan, Sir Roderick Castle. Catelyn, feeling numb, visualizes the loyal old knight and asks about the fate of other residents. Lothar grimly reveals that many were killed by the Ironmen. Overwhelmed with anger and grief, Robb pounds the table with his fist and turns away, hiding his tears from the Freys. Catelyn's thoughts turn to those at Winterfell. Sir Roderick's daughter, Beth, Maester Luwin, Septon Chael, Mikken the blacksmith, Farlan and Palla, Old Nan and Hodor. Her heart aches as she pleads that not all have perished. Lothar reassures her that not everyone was lost. The women and children, including the young Walders, found refuge during the siege. With Winterfell in ruins, they were taken to the Dreadfort by Lord Bolton's son. Robb, alarmed, asks if this son is Ramsay Snow, known for his cruelty. Walder Rivers, correcting him, notes he is a bastard, but the specifics of his monstrous reputations or supposed death are unclear. Lothar explains that amidst the chaos of war, exact details are hard to confirm, but it was Bolton's bastard who reportedly saved the women and children, ensuring their safety at the Dreadfort. Robb, shifting focus, inquires about Theon Greyjoy's fate. Lothar admits he doesn't know, suggesting that Lord Bolton might have more information through his son. Sir Brendan confirms they will indeed ask Lord Bolton about these matters. As the conversation progresses, Lothar Frey senses the distress among the Northerners and suggests postponing their discussion to allow them time to compose themselves. However, Robb, eager to resolve the issue, insists on continuing. Edmure, echoing Robb's sentiment, inquires about House Frey's response to their proposal. Lothar, smiling, delivers his father's terms. Lord Walder Frey will renew his fealty and support Robert's claim as king in the north if Robb personally apologizes for the previous insult to House Frey. Lothar then proposes the marriage between Edmure and his sister Rosalind Frey, a 16-year-old known for her gentle nature and musical talent. The conversation becomes tense when Edmure wishes to see Rosalind before the marriage, but Walder River bluntly denies his request, emphasizing the urgency of the marriage as dictated by Lord Walder. Despite Edmure's discomfort and the Blackfish's concern about the timing amidst the war, Lothar explains that the urgency is driven by the war's unpredictability and Lord Walder's advanced age. He desires to see Rosalind married and protected while he still lives. Catelyn grows uncomfortable with the hastened arrangements, especially since her family is still mourning Lord Hoster's death. She feels compelled to express to the Freys that her brother needs more time to grieve. Lothar attempts to reassure them, suggesting that Rosalind's cheerful disposition might help Edmure through his grief. Walder Rivers, however, makes a pointed remark about their grandfather's disdain for long engagements, alluding to past complications. Robb responds with a cold look and dismisses them. Lothar, with assistance from Rivers, then leaves the room. Edmure is visibly frustrated, feeling insulted that Lord Walder Frey would not trust his promise and dictate his choice of bride. He argues that as Frey's liege lord, he should have the same option Robb had and be delighted at any marriage alliance with him. Catelyn tries to temper his anger by reminding him of Frey's pride and the hurt they've caused. Edmure dismisses the importance of Frey's pride, refusing to be humiliated in his own hall. Robb warns him that refusing the marriage would be seen as another insult by Frey, likely ruining any chance of reconciliation. Edmure, however, is confident that Frey's desire for an alliance will bring him back to negotiate on more favorable terms. Brendan Blackfish questions whether they have the luxury of time for extended negotiations, prompting Robb to express his urgency to return north due to the dire situation there. Catelyn, though reluctantly, emphasizes the necessity of the marriage to maintain their alliance with the Freys. Edmure sarcastically questions why Catelyn isn't the one marrying into the Frey family, to which she wryly notes the current Lady Frey is still very much alive. The Blackfish, though hesitant to dictate marriage choices, reminds Edmure of his previous commitment to make amends for his strategic error in the Battle of the Fords. Finally, after suggesting wildly impractical forms of penance and seeing no support for his defiance, Edmure capitulates, agreeing to marry as a form of reparation, though clearly unhappy about it. A Storm of Swords, Chapter 36. Davos IV. Lord Alistair quickly indicates to Davos that someone is approaching. Davos, however, thinks it's just their guard, Lamprey, bringing dinner as usual. Yet Davos soon realizes multiple people are coming. Lord Alistair, tidying himself up, is convinced either the King or Queen Selyse has come for him, given their familial ties. Lamprey shows up with keys, joined by Sir Axel Florent and 4 guards. When Alistair inquires if the King or Queen has sent for him, Axel denounces him as a traitor. Shocked, Alistair fervently denies the accusation and pleads for a chance to explain himself to the King. Lamprey then unlocks the cell and signals Davos to come out. As Davos leaves, Alistair is locked back inside, his objections disregarded. Axel commands the jailer to take away the torch, plunging Alistair into darkness despite his desperate calls for mercy. Davos, now out of the cell, questions Axel about their destination and if he is to be executed. Axel informs him that he is summoned by King Stannis himself and that the priestess Melisandre will be present. As they proceed, Davos notes that his remaining fingers are still capable of choking the priestess. They make their way up the spiral staircase. Sir Axel finally opens a sturdy door leading them to the stone drum tower. When they reach the middle of the bridge, Sir Axel abruptly halts and gestures for his men to move away. Once alone, he accuses Davos and his brother Alistair of treason. Despite Davos's assurance of loyalty to King Stannis, Axel dismisses it, claiming that both his own visions and the flames from R'hllor's given powers show Davos's future betrayal and Stannis's eventual rule. Axel then states his desire to replace his brother as Hand of the King and commands Davos to suggest it to Stannis. So Axel reveals that the Queen supports his appointment, and even San, a former ally of Davos, agrees with this plan. He expresses frustration that Stannis has not acted on their suggestions and urges Davos, if truly loyal, to support his claim to be Hand of the King, promising Davos a new ship for his cooperation. Davos remains silent, contemplating the situation. He issues a veiled threat to Davos if ever the Onion Knight dares betray him, reminding him of his long-standing control over Dragonstone's garrison. He implies that although he cannot burn Davos without the king's approval, an accident could occur. Demonstrating his point, Axel forcefully pushes Davos against the bridge's side. Davos concedes, inwardly scorning Axel for calling him a traitor. Axel lets him go. They ascend to the summit of the stone drum, entering the chamber of the painted table where they encounter King Stannis. So Axel introduces Davos, calling him the Onion Knight. Stannis appears much older than when Davos last saw him. He wears a crown with flame-shaped points. Since their last meeting before the battle at Blackwater, Stannis has lost significant weight, and his beard is now flecked with grey. His bones are prominent beneath his skin, making him look skeletal. His crown seems too large for his thinner face. The king greets Davos with a faint smile. As Davos kneels, Stannis tells him to rise and mentions he has missed Davos's advice. He asks Davos directly what the penalty for treason is, causing Davos to question if he is the one being accused. Stannis repeats the question, prompting Davos to confirm that the penalty for treason is death. Stannis clarifies to Davos that the harsh penalties for treason aren't personal but a long-standing legal tradition. He emphasizes that even royal figures like Rhaenyra Targaryen were not exempt due to their high status. Davos, realizing Stannis isn't accusing him, feels sympathy for his former cellmate. Despite his exhaustion, Davos defends Lord Florent, arguing that his actions were not treasonous. Stannis vehemently disagrees, recounting how Florent endangered his daughter and kingdom for trivial gains. He contrasts his lack of personal charisma with his brother Robert's ability to foster loyalty even among enemies. He laments that while Robert inspired love and loyalty, he himself seems only to inspire betrayal, even from his own family. So Axel pleads with King Stannis for a chance to demonstrate that not all Florents are disloyal, urging him to reignite the war effort. Stannis reveals that most of his sworn lords, including his maternal grandfather, Lord Estamont, have deserted him for Joffrey, leaving him with few loyal followers who are demoralized and idle. So Axel argues that engaging in battle would rekindle their spirits and remedy their current state of defeat. Stannis skeptically acknowledges the concept of victory, instructing Axel to share his strategy with Davos for his opinion. Despite his reluctance, Axel outlines the plan he formed with Salladhor Saan to attack Claw Isle, the stronghold of Lord Adrian Celtigar, who switched allegiance to Joffrey after being captured at Blackwater. Axel criticizes Celtigar for his betrayal and cowardice, staying in King's Landing to avoid Stannis' wrath. Using Salladhor Saan's fleet and the Dragonstone survivors from Blackwater, including numerous Florents, Axel proposes a fierce retaliation against Lord Celtigar for his defection. He paints Claw Isle as a lightly defended treasure trove, brimming with luxurious items. Axel's strategy is severe. He wants to burn the castle, kill its people, and reduce the island to nothing but ash and bone, leaving it as a grim warning to those who align with the Lannisters. Stannis processes Sir Axel's plan in silence. He acknowledges the low risk and Joffrey's current lack of naval strength. The spoils could also ensure the loyalty of Salladhor Saan for a while. While acknowledging that Claw Isle itself holds little value, Stannis recognizes that its capture could signal to Lord Tywin that his fight continues. He then seeks Davos' honest opinion on the proposal. Recalling his grim experiences in the dungeon and Sir Axel's previous threatening stance, Davos initially hesitates but decides to speak candidly, labeling the plan not just foolish but cowardly. Sir Axel reacts vehemently to being called a coward, but Stannis silences him, urging Davos to continue. Davos challenges the target of Axel's plans, pointing out that their true enemies, the Lannisters, are not present on Claw Isle. Axel retorts that they would still be striking against traitors, hinting that some might even be in their immediate presence. Davos dismisses Axel's insinuation of treachery among them and focuses on defending the people of Claw Isle. He acknowledges that Lord Celtigar did swear fealty to Joffrey, but he emphasizes Celtigar's previous loyalty to Stannis. He recounts how Celtigar supported Stannis at Storm's End and during the Battle of Blackwater, contributing ships and men who ultimately died for Stannis' cause. Davos points out that Claw Isle is now defended mainly by those who are not capable of battle, women, children, and the elderly, because many of Celtigar's fighting men died or were captured during the conflict. He criticizes Axel's proposal to attack Claw Isle, arguing it would be unjust to punish the widows and orphans for the actions of the Lord and his soldiers who were left with little choice but to surrender. Axel counters by asserting that some of Celtigar's men could have chosen death over submission, branding those who knelt as traitors. Davos retorts that they were simply following their lord's lead, questioning what real options they had. Axel argues that some of Celtigar's forces chose death over disloyalty during their defeat, dying as true and loyal men. Stannis firmly states that one must stay loyal to their rightful king, regardless of their direct lord's decisions. Driven to a reckless brink, Davos challenges Stannis by questioning his loyalty during the rebellion against King Aerys, leading to a tense silence. Axel, outraged, accuses Davos of treason and draws his dagger. Amid the charged atmosphere, with Stannis visibly angry and their eyes locked, Stannis orders Axel to sheath his knife and leave them. He further directs Axel to summon Melisandre. Axel, complying with Stannis' command, sheaths his knife and departs swiftly. Alone with Davos, Stannis cautions him about taking liberties with his patience, reminding him of how he previously shortened Davos' fingers. Davos reaffirms his loyalty, accepting that Stannis can cut his tongue off if he wants. Stannis, more composed, insists on honesty, reflecting on the difficult choices he faced during Aerys' reign, choosing between family loyalty and his duty as a subject. Stannis recounts how Aerys often injured himself on it, earning the nickname King's Scab, and notes that Maegor the Cruel met his end in that very chair. He muses on the intense desire his brothers had for the throne. Davos questions why Stannis desires it, prompting Stannis to clarify that his claim is not about desire, but law, as he is Robert's heir. He emphasizes his duty to his daughter, the realm, and his late brother. Stannis believes Robert failed to purge the court of corruption, a task he believes Robert failed to complete after his victory at the Trident. He recalls how Sir Barristan once suggested that Varys should not have been forgiven, and Jaime should have been punished more severely by being sent to the wall. He then abruptly demands Davos to confess why he plotted to kill Melisandre. Davos, realizing Stannis is aware of his intentions, admits that he blames Melisandre for the deaths of his sons at the Blackwater, who he believes were sacrificed for her magical rituals. Stannis defends Melisandre against Davos' accusations, asserting that she did not cause the disastrous fires at the Blackwater. He blames Tyrion Lannister, the pyromancers, and Imry Florence's tactical errors, along with his decision to send Melisandre away when he needed her guidance. He insists that she has remained a loyal servant, despite Davos' reminder of her involvement in the deaths of Maester Cresson, Sir Courtney Penrose, and Stannis' own brother, Renly. He refutes Davos' claim about Renly's death, explaining that Melisandre had seen Renly's demise in her visions but had no direct role in it. He reveals that Melisandre was with him at the time, which Davos can verify through his son Devon. Stannis shares that Melisandre had advised him to reconcile with Renly and later intervene to save Davos from being sacrificed by Sir Axel. Surprised by this, Davos acknowledges his distrust towards Melisandre, to which Stannis responds that despite their differences, Melisandre recognizes Davos's loyalty to him. Stannis then subtly changes the subject to Robert Baratheon's bastard, Edric Storm, whom they had taken from Storm's End and is now very sick. Davos recalls his recent interaction with Edric in Aegon's garden. Stannis reflects that Edric fondly remembers Robert, who pretended to be a doting father, lavishing Edric with gifts, a facade orchestrated by Varys, who really sent the gifts to endear Robert to his unrecognized son. Stannis recalls the defiance of Sir Courtney Penrose, who chose death over surrendering Edric, puzzling over Penrose's fear that Stannis would harm the boy. Stannis closes with a bitter reflection on his decision to support Robert over his own honor during Robert's rebellion, revealing his ongoing internal conflict between familial duties and moral integrity. When Davos expresses his hope for Edric to get better fast, Stannis dismisses this. He emphasizes that Edric's value lies in his royal blood. Stannis gestures towards the painted table. He echoes Aegon the Conqueror's vision of a unified kingdom under a single ruler. Reflecting on justice, Stannis criticizes Sir Axel's understanding of it and rejects his previous proposal to attack Claw Isle, agreeing with Davos that it was a malevolent plan. Turning decisively, Stannis commands Davos to kneel, not for a reprimand, but to elevate him from knight to lord in recognition of his loyalty and honest counsel. Davos, taken aback, expresses his contentment with his current status, humbly admitting he doesn't feel suited for lordship. Stannis insists. Kneeling before Stannis, Davos watches as the king draws Lightbringer, a sword named by Melisandre, and bestows upon Davos new titles, elevating him to Lord of the Rainwood, Admiral of the Narrow Sea, and Hand of the King. Shocked, Davos expresses his doubts. Stannis counters these objections by emphasizing Davos's proven honesty and loyalty. At that moment, Melisandre enters. She dismisses the current conflicts as trivial compared to the great battle she foresees. She speaks with an impending darkness, a terrifying force that will bring endless night and cold. Visibly affected, Stannis mentions that Melisandre has shown him visions of this great threat in the flames. Davos, surprised, questions Stannis about his certainty, knowing well that Stannis is not one to easily believe or lie about such visions. Stannis recounts that right after the battle, Melisandre had him look into the fire. Initially skeptical, he sees visions in the flames and believes deeply enough to stake his kingdom on its truth. Melisandre confirms the gravity of his vision. She urges that Westeros must unite under Stannis, the prophesied king chosen by the god R'hllor. Stannis, conflicted and questioning why R'hllor would choose him over his charismatic brothers, reminisces about Renly and Robert, who would be better suited. Melisandre insists it's because Stannis is a good and honest man. She refers to a plan involving leeches and presses Stannis for decisive action, suggesting that sacrificing the boy, presumably Edric Storm, would allow her to wake the stone dragon. In a heated discussion, Stannis firmly rejects Melisandre's proposal to use Edric Storm. He argues that Edric is innocent and noting his daughter's fondness for him and that Edric is his own brother's kin. Melisandre counters by emphasizing the necessity of a king's blood, which she claims is crucial to awaken the stone dragon. Frustrated and skeptical of the feasibility of reviving dragons, a goal that has historically led to failure and death, like the death of Aerion and Egg, Stannis ends the conversation abruptly. He commands Melisandre to proceed with whatever plans she has involving the leeches. Complying, Melisandre throws a powder into the fire pit, causing the flames to surge. She then presents Stannis with a silver dish containing 3 engorged leeches, filled with what Davos realizes is Edric Storm's blood, a king's blood. Stannis reaches out and grasps one of the leeches. At Melisandre's urging to speak a name, Stannis calls Joffrey Baratheon a usurper and throws the leech into the fire. He then takes a second, declares Balon Greyjoy another usurper with increased volume, and tosses it into the fire as well. Holding the last leech, Stannis pauses to examine it before finally naming Robb Stark a usurper and casting it into the flames. A Storm of Swords, Chapter 37. Jaime V. In the steamy bathhouse of Harrenhal, Jaime enters to find Brienne seated in one, scrubbing her arm vicariously. Surprised by his entrance, Brienne quickly drops her brush and covers herself. She questions Jaime's presence in the bathhouse. Jaime responds that Lord Bolton has invited him for supper, but amusingly notes that his fleas were not invited. After his clothes are removed, he demands the attendants, including a stern-faced woman helping Brienne, leave them alone. Once the attendants exit, Jaime joins Brienne in her large tub, moving carefully due to his condition. Brienne, visibly uncomfortable, suggests he could use another tub. Jaime settles into the tub next to Brienne, assuring her as he submerges himself that he has no interest in her thighs. He props his injured arm on the edge of the tub to keep it dry. He playfully warns Brienne to save him should he faint, not wanting to be the first Lannister to die in such a way. When Brienne asks why she should concern herself with his manner of death, Jaime reminds her of her vow to protect him. Brienne, visibly uncomfortable with the conversation, turns away, prompting Jaime to tease her about her modesty. In the murky waters of the bath, Jaime watches as the layers of grime wash from his body. Brienne remains turned away. Jaime, attempting to provoke a reaction, remarks crudely about his severed hand and its past misdeeds, including killing Aerys, pushing Bran, and making Cersei happy. He then flaunts his stump in her direction as her fault. Shocked, Brienne rises quickly, splashing water as she rises from the tub, exposing her body. This unintentional display causes an unexpected reaction from Jaime. Ashamed, Jaime apologizes, acknowledging his harshness and commending her loyalty and protection. She questions him, asking if he's mocking her. Irritated by her suspicion, he clarifies it's an apology, expressing a desire to end their constant bickering with a truce. Brienne lectures him that truces are based on trust. Jaime reflects on his notorious title as the Kingslayer, and the hypocrisy compared to King Robert's cutting the kingdom in half. Brienne insists that Robert aimed to protect the realm. This leads Jaime to reflect on the ruthlessness of his own family and the Targaryens' obsession with fire. He recounts how after the defeat at the Battle of the Bells, King Aerys, realizing the serious threat Robert posed, greater than any since Daemon Blackfyre, exiled the commander of the defeated forces, Jon Connington. Aerys, leveraging his hostage, Elia, tasked Lewin Martell with leading 10,000 Dornishmen to defeat Robert. Meanwhile, Jon Darry and Barristan Selmy attempted to regroup the scattered forces, and Prince Rhaegar tried convincing his father to seek aid from Tywin Lannister. However, no response came from Castle Rock, intensifying the king's paranoia. Seeing perceived traitors everywhere, with Varys pointing out any he overlooked, Aerys ordered his alchemists to hide caches of wildfire throughout King's Landing in strategic locations, even within the Red Keep itself. He recalls the secrecy surrounding King Aerys' plot, orchestrated by a select group of master pyromancers. With Queen Rhaela oblivious and Prince Rhaegar preoccupied with military preparations, it was Lord Chelstead, the king's hand at the time, who grew suspicious of the frequent comings and goings of the pyromancers. Remembering Lord Chelstead as initially cowardly, Jaime admired the bravery he showed in confronting the king. Chelstead tried various tactics to deter Aerys, reasoning, jesting, threatening, and begging. When all efforts failed, he resigned in protest, throwing down his chain of office. Aerys responded by burning him alive and appointing Rosart, his favored pyromancer, as the new hand. Jaime reflects on his role during this time, standing guard by the Iron Throne, clad in his white armor, silently protecting the king and his deadly secrets. King Aerys kept Jaime close, not due to trust, but to ensure constant surveillance by Varys because he was Tywin Lannister's son. He witnessed the enthusiasm of Rosart and the pyromancers placing wildfire throughout King's Landing. Jaime's narrative shifts to the pivotal Battle of the Trident, where Rhaegar fell to Robert. Following this defeat, Aerys sent Queen Rhaella and Prince Viserys to Dragonstone, but detained Princess Elia and her son Aegon in the capital, believing this would secure Dawn's loyalty. Aerys was overheard declaring his intent to reduce King's Landing to ashes if the rebels approached, preferring to reign over ruins rather than surrender. He imagined dying in a grand blaze, believing he would be reborn as a dragon from the flames, akin to Aerion Brightfire, and thereby turn all his adversaries to ash. As Robert's forces advanced, Tywin Lannister's armies reached King's Landing first, gaining entry after Grand Maester Pycelle convinced Aerys that Tywin had come to defend him. A critical mistake, as Aerys chose to ignore Varys' counsel at a crucial time. Tywin had remained neutral in the war, weighing the wrongs Aerys had inflicted upon him and deciding to align House Lannister with the likely victor following the outcome at the Trident. Tasked with defending the Red Keep, Jaime realized the situation was untenable and sought Aerys' permission to negotiate surrender. Instead, the king demanded his father's head to prove his loyalty. Understanding that Aerys planned to burn the city rather than surrender, as he was with his trusted pyromancer Rosart, Jaime took action. Jaime intercepted Rosart disguised as a soldier heading to execute the king's orders, and killed him first. Subsequently, he killed King Aerys before he could command another to ignite the wildfire. In the days that followed, he located and killed the remaining pyromancers. Bellis tried to bribe him, and Gorgas pleaded for his life. Jaime gave them a quicker death with the sword and more merciful than fire. The bath water cools, and as Jaime opens his eyes, he stares at his stump. Brienne is speechless after Jaime's tale. He challenges her to react, curse, kiss, or accuse him of lying. Brienne questions the truthfulness of his story, wondering why such secrets aren't common knowledge. Jaime, amused, reminds her of the Kingsguard oath to secrecy and speculates that the Honorable Ned Stark would never have listened to his justifications, having already judged him guilty. As Jaime attempts to stand, he accidentally strikes his stump against the tub's rim, pain shooting through him. The room spins. Brienne catches him, preventing his fall. Her gentleness, unexpected and more profound than Cersei's, supports him as he unsteadily exits the tub. Calling for the guards, Brienne refers to him only as the Kingslayer, but in his mind, Jaime reaffirms his identity, thinking that his name is Jaime. Jaime regains consciousness on the damp floor of the bathhouse, surrounded by guards, Brienne, and Qyburn, all looking down at him worriedly. Despite her nudity, Brienne seems oblivious to her lack of clothing, focused instead on Jaime's condition. Qyburn assures Jaime's health and instructs the guards to clean Jaime up and get him ready for supper with Lord Bolton. Brienne takes charge of preparing Jaime with clothes. Qyburn provides Brienne with the only available women's clothing at Harrenhal, a stained pink satin gown. Jaime observes how out of place she looks in this feminine garb. He thinks of several mocking remarks, but chooses to keep them to himself. Half an hour later, Jaime and Brienne meet Lord Bolton at his trestle table. Brienne respectfully addresses him. Roose Bolton, with his unsettling pale eyes and soft voice, welcomes Jaime and invites them to sit. He offers them wine from the depleted cellars, a remnant of Sir Armory's greed. Instinctively reaching for his wine with his right hand, Jaime knocks the goblet, splashing red wine onto his bandages. He awkwardly catches the cup with his left, but Roose Bolton tactfully ignores this mishap. As Bolton enjoys a prune, he suggests Jaime try them as well. However, Jaime is more focused on Bolton's motives. With a faint smile, Roose acknowledges Jaime as a dangerous prize, even revealing that Edmure Tully has posted a significant bounty for his recapture. Jaime retorts that his sister would offer much more. Bolton's smile briefly reappears as he considers the competing offers for Jaime's capture, including Lord Karstark's promise of his daughter's hand to the man who brings him Jaime's head. Bolton recalls that he sent Harrion Karstark, a former captive at Harrenhal, away with Glover and expresses hope that he hasn't met a grim fate at Duskendale. This was Roose deliberately weakening Robb Stark's loyal northern forces, while Roose protects his own men. Bolton reveals that he has married Lady Walder Frey, choosing her for the substantial dowry her weight in silver would bring. Brienne then questions Lord Bolton about his intentions regarding Harrenhal and Vargo Hoat. Bolton confirms that granting Harrenhal to Hoat was part of their agreement, explaining that he must fulfill his promises just as the Lannisters do. He also mentions he will soon depart to attend Edmure Tully's wedding to Lady Rosalind Frey, as commanded by his king. Jaime is surprised to hear Edmure's wedding, having assumed Robb Stark would be the one marrying. Bolton corrects him, stating that King Robb has already married Jean Westerling of the Crag, a family sworn to the Lannisters. Jaime struggles to remember Jean, knowing the Westerlings are a proud but not powerful house. Brienne expresses disbelief, insisting that Robb was pledged to marry a Frey. Bolton calmly reminds her of Robb's youth and firmly requests that she not question his word. Jaime, reflecting on Robb Stark's fate, feels a twinge of pity, noting that Robb has won his battles but lost his war in the bed. Curious about the repercussions of Robb's actions, Jaime asks Roose Bolton how Lord Walder Frey feels about replacing his expected alliance with the Starks for one with the Tullys. Bolton wryly notes that trout makes for a fine meal and mentions his own disappointment as Elmar was set to marry Arya Stark, but the betrothal was broken after Robb's betrayal. Brienne, concerned, inquires about Arya Stark's fate. Bolton assures her Arya is alive and mentions plans to safely return her to the north. Brienne brings up the return of both Stark sisters in exchange for Jaime. Bolton meets this with skepticism, remarking that Lannisters are known for their lies. Jaime, feeling provoked, threatens Bolton with his dinner knife. Roose Bolton admonishes Jaime for threatening violence over dinner, reminding him of the sacred laws of hospitality still honored in the north. Jaime retorts his status not as a guest, but a captive, still embittered by the loss of his hand at the hands of Bolton's associate, Vargo Hoat. Taken aback by Jaime's forthrightness, Bolton muses about possibly making Jaime a wedding gift for Edmure Tully or even executing him, drawing a parallel to how Jaime's sister handled Eddard Stark. Jaime warns him against such actions, citing the long memory of Castle Rock, though Bolton dismisses the threat, suggesting that Lannister hostility holds little weight with him. Jaime hints at the potential benefits of Lannister friendship, trying to gauge the political game unfolding. But he is uncertain if Brienne grasped the stakes as he does. Bolton remains skeptical about the value of Lannister alliances. Brienne then presses Bolton on the necessity of their release to fulfill the exchange of Jaime for the Stark's daughters. Bolton, however, corrects her, stating that he received word of Jaime's escape, not an exchange from Riverrun, implying her actions could be seen as treasonous. But after some conversing, Roose Bolton tells Brienne that he plans to facilitate Jaime's return as she and Lady Stark desire. However, Bolton notes a complication introduced by Lord Vargo Hoat, who cut off Jaime's hand. Jaime cynically remarks that Hoat delights in mutilation for no particular reason. Bolton clarifies that Hoat had a calculated reason. He explains that he lured Hoat away from the Lannisters by promising him Harrenhal, a reward vastly superior to anything Tywin Lannister would offer, yet unbeknownst to Hoat, Harrenhal is cursed. Bolton speculates that Vargo Hoat hoped for a Lannister defeat at King's Landing, expecting gratitude and Harrenhal from Stannis Baratheon. But now, Bolton remarks that with Stannis weakened and Renly dead, Hoat's only hope to avoid Tywin's wrath is a Stark victory. A prospect growing increasingly unlikely. Brienne counters, citing Robb Stark's unblemished battle record, but Bolton points out Robb's strategic losses, suggesting a more experienced leader might have sought peace by now. The Lord of Dreadfort explains that while both sides used Hoat, neither would lament his demise. He didn't fight at the Blackwater, but his fate was sealed there nonetheless. Bolton explains that Hoat needed to keep Jaime securely at Harrenhal since the Riverlands are teeming with various groups who would seize him if given the chance. Glover and Talhart's forces along with the Karstarks. Additionally, Lordless Darrymen, Wild Wolves, and Beric Dondarrion's outlaws. Bolton highlights that Harrenhal, despite its challenges, remains the safest place for Vargo Hoat to keep Jaime. But it is also strongly held by his own Bolton men and the Freys, outnumbering the brave companions. Roose implies that Hoat's concern was that he, Roose, might either return Jaime to Edmure at Riverrun or send him to Tywin Lannister, further complicating his plans. Bolton reveals Hoat's strategic reasoning behind Jaime's maiming. To neutralize him as a threat, send a brutal message to Tywin Lannister, and decrease his value. Roose seeks Jaime's cooperation to clear him of any responsibility in the eyes of Tywin. Jaime, understanding the precarious position, offers to vouch for Bolton's treatment of him once he is reunited with his sister Cersei, knowing well that any other response might lead Bolton to hand him back to Vargo Hoat. He humorously remarks on his willingness to provide a written statement of his rescue by the Honourable Lord Bolton. Acknowledging Jaime's agreement, Bolton expresses his trust in Jaime's promise to absolve him of Jaime's missing hand. Jaime, slightly amused by being trusted, asks about the logistics of their departure from Harrenhal and how Bolton plans to safely navigate the myriad dangers outside, from roaming enemy soldiers to bandits and the vengeful Karstarks. Bolton outlines Jaime's departure conditions. He will leave when deemed fit by Qyburn, accompanied by a strong escort led by Captain Walton, known as Steelshanks for his unwavering loyalty. This escort will ensure Jaime's safe return to King's Landing. Brienne, concerned with the Stark's daughter's safety, insists that his protection remains her responsibility. Bolton dismisses her concerns, revealing that Sansa Stark is now married to Tyrion Lannister, making her untouchable. Brienne is shocked, recalling Tyrion's public vows, and struggles to comprehend this turn of events. Jaime, though surprised himself, considers how his brother might react to this unexpected marriage, remembering Tyrion's brief happiness in a previous marriage. Bolton coldly informs them that Tyrion's vows are irrelevant to their situation, especially to Brienne, who looks visibly hurt by this realization. As Bolton signals his guards, it becomes clear that while Jaime may proceed to King's Landing, Brienne's fate remains uncertain. Bolton hints ominously that letting Brienne go would rob Vargo Hoat of his remaining prize, suggesting she should focus more on securing her own safety than on the Stark girls. A Storm of Swords, Chapter 38. Tyrion V. Tyrion sits waiting, surrounded by Lord Giles, Sir Adam, Jalabar Zoe, and others. His father insisted they accompany him to avoid offending Doran Martell, as he felt it might be seen as disrespectful if only Tyrion, a dwarf, greeted him. Tyrion muses that King Joffrey should have been the one to meet the Dornishmen, but doubts Joffrey's ability to handle the situation without errors. Recently, Joffrey has been sharing derogatory jokes about the Dornish learned from Mace Tyrell's men, such as a mocking question about how many Dornishmen it takes to shoe a horse. As Tyrion watches a long column of riders emerge from the wood, he asks Bronn how many banners he counts, and Bronn estimates 9. Tyrion then instructs Podrick to identify each banner with Bronn's help. He sees House Martell, House Dolt of Lemonwood, House Blackmont, House Manwoody, House Corgyle of Sandstone, House Ulla, House Illyrion of God's Grace, House Gargolin of Saltshaw, and House Jourdain of Tor. Tyrion laughs, praising Bod for correctly naming all 9, claiming he couldn't have done it himself. Though his statement is not entirely truthful, it serves to boost Pod's confidence, which Tyrion believes he needs. Martell's arrival with such prominent Dornish lords makes Tyrion uneasy. This leads him to question his decision to send Marcilla to Sunspear, wondering if he made an error. Pod's observation that Doran Martell is not traveling in his customary litter adds to Tyrion's anxiety. Tyrion notes they are well equipped for battle. King Daeron noted 3 types of Dornishmen: the lithe, dark-skinned salty Dornishmen of the coasts, the darker sandy Dornishmen from the deserts who wear bright scarves for sun protection, and the large fair stony Dornishmen from the mountains, descendants of the Andals and the First Men, with skin that freckles or burns in the sun. All 3 groups are well represented in Prince Doran's entourage. Tyrion sees the Dornish leader rides a magnificent black stallion, concluding that this cannot be Prince Doran. Tyrion greets the rider and the leader removes his helmet, revealing a mature, stern face with deep, glossy dark eyes. He explains that due to his brother's health issues, Doran remains at Sunspear, and he has been appointed to represent Prince Doran on King Joffrey's council. Tyrion, masking his concern, graciously acknowledges the prince's participation. Oberyn introduces his companions and his paramour, Ellaria Sand, a black-haired woman standing at the back. Tyrion knows Cersei will object to Ellaria Sand attending the wedding in a prominent position. If Cersei relegates Ellaria to a lesser spot, she risks inciting Prince Oberyn's anger. Tyrion wonders if Prince Doran is intentionally stirring trouble. Prince Oberyn turns his horse to address his entourage, remarking sarcastically about King Joffrey's apparent affection, highlighted by sending Tyrion to greet them. Bronn can't help but laugh, and Tyrion plays along with a forced smile. Tyrion internally notes that his group of minor lords and knights lack the prestige and imposing presence of the Dornish contingent. Lady Blackmont conveys to Tyrion that following their extended travel, the Dornish delegation would welcome some rest. Tyrion quickly consents and gestures to Sir Adam Marbrand to initiate the march. The mounted gold cloaks, constituting the majority of Tyrion's honor guard, proceed toward the river and King's Landing. Riding beside Prince Oberyn, Tyrion mutters to himself about the daunting challenge of handling the infamous Red Viper of Dorne. Oberyn's reputation was shaped by a scandal at 16 involving Lord Yorenwood's paramour, leading to a duel meant only to draw first blood. Both participants were injured, but while Oberyn recovered, Yorenwood's wounds became infected and proved fatal. Rumors that Oberyn used a poison blade earned him the ominous nickname the Red Viper among both friends and foes. Years have passed since then, and his legend becoming considerably more ominous. Oberyn has journeyed through the Free Cities, mastering the art of poisoning. His academic pursuits led him to the Citadel, where he forged 6 links of a maester's chain before his interest waned. He then served as a mercenary in the disputed lands, initially joining the Second Sons before establishing his own group, potentially the brave companions who are ravaging the Riverlands right now and turning the common folk against the Lannisters. Tyrion views Oberyn's presence in King's Landing as a deliberate provocation, especially given that he crippled Willis Tyrell. As they ride together, Oberyn remarks that they have met before, though he jests that Tyrion was too small to remember. Detecting a mocking tone in Oberyn's voice, Tyrion opts not to react provocatively and instead inquires politely about the occasion. Oberyn recalls a visit to Castle Rock as a teenager with his family, while Tyrion's father served as hand to King Aerys. This visit coincided with a somber period at the Rock, following the death of Tyrion's mother during his birth, which plunged the household into mourning. Tywin Lannister rarely talked about his wife, but Tyrion had overheard his uncles describe the deep bond they shared. At that time, while Tywin served as King Aerys' hand, it was widely believed that although he ruled the 7 kingdoms, it was Lady Joanna who held sway over him. Tyrion reflects on how profoundly his father changed after his mother's death, recalling his uncle Gerion's words that the best part of Tywin died with Lady Joanna. Tyrion asks Oberyn if he enjoyed his previous visit, and Oberyn recalls a less than welcoming stay at Castle Rock. Tyrion's father ignored them, leaving their care to Sir Kevan. Despite the luxury, Oberyn compares his accommodations to a dungeon due to its darkness and lack of windows. He criticizes the dreary climate, overly sweet wine, modest women, bland food, and notes that Tyrion, just a newborn at the time, was the biggest disappointment. Curious, Tyrion asks what Oberyn could have possibly expected from an infant. Oberyn explains that he and his mother were in Old Town when news of Tyrion's birth in King's Landing reached them. The city was abuzz with talk of the monstrous child born to the king's hand. Oberyn adds that Tyrion's birth was also seen as a divine abomination to Lord Tywin, who had elevated himself above King Aerys, hinting that no man should surpass a king. He suggests Tyrion was a curse from the gods to remind Tywin of his humanity. Tyrion jests about his father's stubbornness in refusing to learn from this supposed lesson, and despite the grave undertones, he encourages Oberyn to continue, enjoying the narrative. Oberyn recounts the grotesque rumors that circulated about Tyrion at his birth, describing him as having a monstrous head that was disproportionate to his body, thick black hair and a beard at birth, an evil eye, lion's claws, and both male and female genitalia. Tyrion responds life would indeed be simpler if men could physically satisfy themselves, and that claws and teeth might also be useful. Oberyn shares that they rarely saw Tyrion during their stay at the Rock, only hearing his cries at night, which echoed through the halls, suggesting that even as an infant, that Tyrion had a powerful voice that could only be soothed by a woman's chest. Tyrion quips that some things haven't changed. Oberyn laughs at this. Tyrion asks Oberyn to continue talking about his sister Cersei. Oberyn recounts that Cersei had promised to show Tyrion to Elia and him. On the day before the Martells were scheduled to depart, while their parents were in a meeting, Cersei, along with Jaime, led them to Tyrion's nursery. When the Networths attempted to turn them away, Cersei forcefully asserted her ownership over Tyrion, threatening the nurse into submission with a typically harsh and commanding retort that highlighted her early grasp of manipulation and control. Tyrion dryly comments on Cersei's precocious charm. Oberyn describes how Cersei revealed Tyrion to them and realized all the rumors were untrue. He notes that despite Tyrion's appearance, Elia Martell reacted with the typical sounds young girls make when they see infants. She even seemed inclined to nurse him herself. When Oberyn joked about Tyrion being an underwhelming monster, Cersei retorted that Tyrion had caused their mother's death, and then cruelly twisted his genitals, causing him to cry out in pain. It was only Jaime's intervention that made her relent. Cersei dismissively remarked that Tyrion was likely to die soon anyway, suggesting his life was of little value. Tyrion shivers upon hearing Oberyn's tale and gives Oberyn a stern glance. Wondering if Oberyn is testing him or simply trying to provoke a reaction similar to Cersei's past cruelty, Tyrion dryly suggests that Oberyn should share this story with his father. Prince Oberyn chuckles, noting that Tyrion had become more amusing since their last meeting. Tyrion wryly remarks that he had intended to grow taller instead. The conversation shifts as Oberyn brings up a rumor about a peculiar tax Tyrion had supposedly imposed. Annoyed, Tyrion clarifies that it is actually a tax on prostitution, an idea conceived by his father to obscenely improve the city's morals. Internally, Tyrion knows it's really meant to fund King Joffrey's extravagant wedding. As the Master of Coin, the tax has been unpopularly dubbed the Dwarf's Penny, and Tyrion bears the brunt of the public's disapproval. Oberyn quips about ensuring his pouch is well stocked with pennies. He invites Tyrion to join him and Ellaria. Tyrion, however, clarifies his married state. Oberyn shifts the conversation to the splendor of the upcoming royal wedding. Intrigued, Tyrion asks if Oberyn is hungry. Oberyn, with a deeper undertone in his reply, indicates that his true hunger is for justice. Tyrion, recognizing Oberyn's true intentions for being in King's Landing, asks about his relationship with his sister Elia. Oberyn reflects on their close bond during childhood, similar to Tyrion's relationship between Jaime and Cersei. Tyrion inwardly hopes the comparison doesn't hold too true. Tyrion attempts to assure Oberyn that the Lannisters will investigate the murders of Elia and her children. However, Oberyn sharply dismisses Tyrion's assurances as lies, questioning if the Lannisters consider the Martells naive or foolish. He recounts that Jon Arryn had already investigated in Sunspear shortly after Robert's rebellion. Oberyn declares his intent to seek justice, starting with Gregor Clegane and who ordered the atrocities. With a chilling smile, Oberyn shares an anecdote about a Septon who once called him living proof of the god's goodness because they didn't make him his mother's firstborn. He then threatens Tyrion that, unlike Doran, his patient brother, he is a bloodthirsty man. Tyrion, probing further, mentions Willis Tyrell, whom Oberyn had crippled in a joust. Contrary to Tyrion's expectation of a defensive or tense reaction, Oberyn remains composed. He explains that he and Willis corresponded recently, bonding over a mutual appreciation for fine horses. Oberyn clarifies that there was no malice in the jousting accident. It was an unfortunate mishap where Willis's foot got caught during his fall, leading to severe injury. Oberyn shifts the blame to Mace Tyrell, Willis's father, criticizing him for pushing Willis into a high-stakes competition too early, seeking glory at the expense of his son's safety. As they discuss the prowess of knights, Tyrion counters Oberyn's skepticism about Sir Loras Tyrell, asserting that Loras has indeed bested many noble knights, including Jaime. Oberyn clarifies he means actual combat, not just jousting victories. Tyrion responds by listing Sir Loras's achievements, including killing notable knights and performing valorously at the Battle of the Blackwater, supposedly alongside the spectre of Lord Renly Baratheon. Oberyn, skeptical of these tales, laughs off the stories. Tyrion suggests a visit on the Street of Silk to Chatea's brothel and rides ahead to the ferry barges waiting at the Blackwater, musing that perhaps King Joffrey would have been a better envoy to deal with Oberyn's sharp humor. Imagining Joffrey's blunt and potentially offensive questions to Oberyn amuses Tyrion despite his irritation. He plans to be present when Oberyn meets the king, anticipating an interesting interaction. A Storm of Swords, Chapter 39. Arya VII. In the dim light of early morning, a man positioned by the chimney on a roof is the first to be struck down by Angwai, who shoots an arrow that hits his heart. Nearby, the Murmur's two guards are momentarily blinded by their own torchlight, allowing the outlaws to approach undetected. Kyle and Notch release their arrows simultaneously, striking one guard in the throat and the other in the stomach. The injured guard drops his torch, igniting his clothing as he screams, thereby alerting everyone to the attacker's presence. At this signal, Thoros calls out, and the outlaws charge forward to attack more openly. Sitting on her horse, Arya observes from a ridge that overlooks the Septry. Lord Beric has assigned beardless Dick and Mudge to watch over her and Gendry, making Arya feel sidelined as if she were a naive child, but she accepts it without complaint. Fiery arrows pierce the morning mist, striking the Septry and igniting its wooden walls. Two Murmurs charge out of the Septry, axes ready, but Angwai and his fellow archers take them down. Amidst this chaos, a Myrish crossbowman makes a brief appearance, quickly retreating as three arrows narrowly miss him. Arya watches as flames engulf several upper windows of the Septry. Suddenly, the Septry doors burst open and Murmurs pour out like a swarm of enraged ants. Two Ibonese emerge first, their shields raised protectively. Following them is a Dothraki. Three Volentian sellswords and more enemies scramble out of the windows. Arya witnesses the fierce battle as one of Angwai's archers, Kyle, attempts to ready another arrow when suddenly a man clad in blackmail impales him with a spear. Arya hears Lord Beric's commanding shout, signaling his men emerge from hiding, brandishing their weapons. She watches Lem in his bright yellow cloak charge at the man who struck down Kyle, seeking retribution. Thoros and Lord Beric move in. Lord Beric kills the Dothraki with his Ertac. Arya also spots Ned, bravely fighting alongside Lord Beric, which stirs a mix of admiration and frustration within her. She thinks it's unjust that Ned Dane, only slightly older than she, is allowed to fight while she is held back. The battle swiftly concludes as the remaining brave companions either die or lay down their weapons. Lord Beric allows 2 Dothraki to flee on horseback, a deliberate move to sow fear among their ranks at Harrenhal. With his flaming sword raised, he proclaims that their escape will haunt the nights of Lord Bolton and Vargo Hoat. Meanwhile, Jack B. Lucky, Harwin, and Merritt O'Moontown venture into the fiery Septry to rescue any captives. They soon return, escorting 8 friars and a septon. Thoros acknowledges the man known as Ut, while Lem questions the nature of his deity. Acknowledging his misdeeds, Septon Ut expresses remorse. Arya, recalling her time at Harrenhal, remembers that Ut often sought forgiveness after his violent acts, even asking his comrades to punish him, which they found amusing. Lord Beric extinguishes his sword's flames when he sheaths it. He commands that the dying receive mercy and the others be restrained for a trial. His orders are promptly carried out. The trials are quick, with many outlaws detailing the crimes committed by the brave companions, including looting, arson, and violence against civilians. During the trials, witnesses speak of the boys Septon Ute had taken. Throughout the proceedings, the Septon weeps and pleads for mercy, confessing his weakness and unintended harm to the boys. His pleas, however, do not sway Lord Beric, and Septon Ut is soon hung from a tall elm tree, along with the other brave companions. Some resist fiercely, while others desperately bargain for their lives, offering information or pleading their usefulness. Nevertheless, each meets the same fate. As they are executed, Tom Sevenstring plays a mournful tune on his wood harp, and Thoros calls upon his god to internally punish their souls. Arya watches the brave companions hang from a tree, and despite her lesser fear of Septon Ut compared to others at Harrenhal, she's relieved by his death. She's frustrated, however, that the Hound was treated and released by the outlaws instead of being executed, with only his gold taken as compensation. The outlaws seek shelter in a riverside brewhouse. The 8 Freyas and Septon refrain from asking the outlaws for their names, apparently recognizing them by Lord Beric's distinct lightning bolt symbols and Thoros's worn red garments. A bold young novice challenges Thoros, telling him not to worship his god under their roof. Lem Lemoncloak retorts, defending the Red God and questioning the novice's beliefs about the power of the Seven, considering they were just saved by non-believers. Lord Beric intercedes, insisting they respect the host's customs, while Thoros, more gently, suggests that skipping a R'hllor prayer won't dim the sunlight. Lord Beric doesn't eat. Arya notes that since she came upon their company, she hasn't seen him eat nor sleep, maintaining a constant vigilance with his good eye. Lord Beric notices Arya staring at him and asks if he scares her. Arya denies feeling afraid, expressing instead her surprise at seeing him alive after the Hound's attack. Lem Lemoncloak interjects, attributing Beric's survival to Thoros's remarkable healing abilities. Acknowledging this with a wary nod, Lord Beric then instructs Lem to go on watch. Once Lem departs, Lord Beric reflects on the blindness of bravery when fear overtakes. He questions Thoros about how many times he has been resurrected, revealing it's been 6. Thoros warns that each resurrection is more challenging and that Beric's recklessness could lead to a final death. Beric acknowledges this and reflects on his fading memories, unable to recall details of his past life, including the castle he once held or his betrothed's hair color. Arya asks Thoros if he could resurrect a headless man just once. Thoros describes performing a ritual known as the Last Kiss, which he had used on Beric out of tradition rather than expectation of resurrection. To his astonishment, Beric revived. Arya's emotions swell as Thoros effectively confirms there's no way to bring back the dead as she hoped, his elaborate explanation boiling down to a simple no. Lord Beric, sympathizing with her situation and recalling her father's legacy through stories told by Harwin, expresses his wish to release her without ransom for her father's sake, but admits the dire need for funds. He had already allocated the Hound's gold for essentials. Arya doubts her own value, wondering how much her brother Robb, now a king and far changed from the boy she remembered, would pay for her. She fears his rejection over her unkempt appearance and unladylike skills, contrasting sharply with her mother's expectations of femininity. Despite Arya's self-doubt and the teasing, Thoros reassures her with a laugh, confident that her brother will indeed pay the ransom. Later in the night, with more members of the Brotherhood around, Arya hears Merritt lamenting his horse's lost shoe. Gendry steps up, offering his blacksmith skills to serve Lord Beric. Kneeling, he pledges his service, mentioning his past work, including a helmet that was stolen by one of the Mountain's men. Arya feels a twinge of abandonment as Gendry speaks about staying. Lord Beric suggests Gendry might be better off at Riverrun, where he could potentially be paid, but Gendry insists he seeks only basic necessities in exchange for his work. Beric questions why Gendry would choose to stay with them, given the hardships they face. Gendry explains his admiration for the group's ethos and their fair treatment of prisoners, contrasting this with the brutal methods of Lords Bolton and Tywin, and Sir Amory. He prefers to align himself with what he feels are true values of justice and brotherhood. Jack points out that there is plenty of armor needing repair. Lem warns Gendry about the harsh realities of their outlaw life, dispelling any romantic notions of heroism or chivalry. Despite the grim warning, Gendry stands firm in his decision to join them. Jack B. Lucky supports Gendry's bravery and utility, and Harwin humorously suggests they accept him quickly before he reconsiders. Lord Beric, with a faint smile, requests his sword from Thoros. In a solemn ceremony, he lightly places the sword on Gendry's shoulder, asking him to swear allegiance to their cause, defending the defenseless and facing all duties courageously. Gendry affirms his commitment. Beric then knights him as Sir Gendry, Knight of the Hollow Hill, officially welcoming him into their brotherhood. Rough, rasping laughter echoes from the doorway as Sandor Clegane suddenly enters. Despite his injuries and the crude sling binding his arm, his presence is imposing. He mocks Lord Beric for knighting more men. Beric responds coolly, inquiring how Clegane found them, to which Clegane retorts that the smoke from their fire was a clear giveaway. When Beric asks what happened to the men he assigned as guards, Clegane hints at possibly killing the sentries, provoking the archers, Angai and Notch, to ready their bows. Thoros questions Clegane's motives for pursuing them, suggesting madness or drunkenness, but Clegane, bitter about the lack of gold for even a drink, dismisses the idea. Angai threatens Clegane, who in turn dares the archer to try harming him. Before any arrows are loosed, Beric intervenes, seeking to understand Clegane's true purpose. Clegane demands the return of his gold, which Beric explains was sent south to buy supplies for the needy, a claim Gendry supports. Clegane mocks Arya, asking Lord Beric if he's going to be knighting her next, to which Arya retorts assertively about her age and capability. She reminds Clegane that she could have killed him if not for Lem. Sandor dismissively tells her to complain to Lem and warns her about the natural enmity between dogs and wolves. Lem advises Sandor to leave, but Clegane insists on retrieving his gold, claiming innocence as declared by their god. Thoros of Myr counters, stating that although Clegane's life was spared by divine intervention, it doesn't absolve him of his nature. tension escalates as several outlaws draw their weapons, with Arya hoping this confrontation might finally end Clegane's life. The Hound denounces them all as common thieves, drawing a parallel between their actions and those of the armies ravaging the lands. Despite his harsh words, he retreats into the rainy night without further incident. Harwin decides to check on the sentries to ensure their safety, while Lem asks how Clegane amassed so much wealth. Anguy reveals that Clegane won it by winning the Hand's tourney, sharing his own tale of squandering his winnings on luxuries and companions in King's Landing. Thoros reflects seriously on Sandor Clegane's flight. Having lost the Lannisters and likely unwelcomed by Robb, the gold was his last remnant of stability. Watty the Miller fears Clegane might seek revenge while they sleep, but Lord Beric reassures them that Clegane would face them directly in combat, not through stealth. Beric strategizes for Anguy and Beardless Dick to watch the rear during their travel and to disable Clegane's horse if he pursues them. Anguy and Lem, however, see value in the horse and suggest targeting Clegane instead. Beric remains firm, respecting the outcome of their earlier trial by combat under the eyes of R'hllor. Thoros supports Beric, reminding the group of the divine intervention during the trial indicates that the Lord of Light still has plans for him. Harwin returns, reporting that their sentry, Puddingfoot, was asleep but safe, prompting Lem to express frustration over the risk to their safety caused by the sentry's negligence. That night, discomfort pervades as Arya and the others know Sandor Clegane lurks in the darkness nearby. Arya, nestled near the fire, clutches the coin Jaqen H'ghar gave her. She thinks of how Jaqen and Hotpie are gone, and now Gendry is leaving her too. Her thoughts then shift to those who died, Lomi, Yoren, Syrio Forel, and her father. Clutching the coin, she whispers Vala Morghulis before she recites a list of those she is going to kill. She falls asleep. In the morning, Septon Ut still hangs from the tree, while the Brown brothers dig graves for the deceased in the rain. Lord Beric expresses his gratitude for their hospitality, leaving them with silver stags to aid in their rebuilding efforts. Meanwhile, Harwin, likely Luke, and Watty the Miller return from scouting without any sightings of wolves or hounds. As Arya tightens her saddle, Gendry approaches to apologize. Arya mounts her horse to speak from a higher position, internally questioning his choice, but outwardly dismissing his decision to become an outlaw, indicating she will soon be safe with her brother at Riverrun. The day is clear, allowing them to make good progress without the hindrance of rain. A Storm of Swords, Chapter 40. Bran III. The tower stands on an island. Oak trees thickly line the shore near a mostly ruined village. Meera scouts ahead. Bran watches Summer chase after deer, feeling a fleeting desire to join him. However, Meera signals them forward, and Bran, along with Jojen, follows her into the village. This terrain, easier than the mountains they've left behind, makes Meera feel exposed due to its openness. When Jojen asks who owns the land, Bran explains it's controlled by the Night's Watch, referred to as the Gift and the New Gift. He shares the history taught by Maester Luwin. The land was initially donated by Brandon the Builder, or possibly another Brandon, to support the Black Brothers. Later, impressed by the Night's Watch, good Queen Alysanne visited and doubled their territory, creating what is now known as the New Gift, at the expense of Umber and Mountain Clans' lands because they practiced the Lord's right to the First Night. Bran gestures around, encompassing the vast area granted. It's clear to Bran that the village has been abandoned for many years. Jojen, assessing the fertility of the soil, questions why such a promising area is abandoned. Bran explains that fear of wildling attacks drove the residents away. As dark clouds gather, indicating an approaching storm, Jojen suggests they seek shelter under the tree. Bran recommends the nearby holdfast despite the lack of a boat, revealing a submerged stone causeway that leads there. The path zigzags under the water, making the route lengthy and dangerous due to the slimy, slippery stones. Hodor nearly slips twice. They quickly reach the island and ascend the steps to the holdfast. They enter a dimly lit strong room that barely accommodates them together. Bran notes a grate above, a murder hole, and is relieved it's empty. Sitting in his basket on Hodor's back, Bran removes the grate, blocking the murder hole. Meera compliments Bran for removing the grate, which makes him blush. As they reach the roof, the sky is dark with overcast clouds and a strong wind snaps Bran's cloak. Meera feels like she's towering above the world, but Jojen reminds her that trees in the neck stand even taller. Meera remarks that the next trees are tightly clustered with no broad views and brisk wind. Bran is disappointed they can't spot the wall and asks Jojen about their strategy for when they arrive at the wall. Jojen proposes their pathway might be through one of the neglected fortresses along the wall, once manned by the Night's Watch, but now empty. Bran remembers these as ghost castles, a label from Old Nan. He once memorized all their names for Maester Luwin, a challenging task as there are 19, though rarely all occupied. At a feast for King Robert at Winterfell, Bran recited them to his uncle Benjen, who humorously suggested Bran could be first ranger for his knowledge. Bran notes that when fortresses were abandoned, their gates were sealed with ice and rocks. Meera counters that they'll need to unseal them, but Bran is apprehensive. He suggests they seek help at Castle Black instead and requests the Lord Commander to allow them passage. Jojen cautions against this due to the many members at Castle Black. He points out the risk of just one member betraying Bran's identity to enemies like the Iron Men or the Bastard of Bolton, and expresses doubt that the Night's Watch would let them through without complications. Bran remains hopeful, citing his family's strong ties to the Night's Watch and the presence of his uncle and brother Jon at Castle Black, believing they could be supportive. He clings to the possibility that the Watch might even provide them with horses, despite hearing that his uncle Benjen has disappeared on a mission. Jojen tells them to be quiet, looking toward the sunset, and spots what he thinks is a rider in the distance. Bran squints and eventually sees movement. Hodor mimics them but looks in the wrong direction, confused. Meera observes that the rider is moving slowly but seems to be heading for the village. Bran is concerned about Summer's proximity to the village, but Meera reassures him, noting it's just one man on a weary horse. Raindrops begin to fall just as the storm intensifies. Meera checks on the rider and reports that he has taken shelter in the inn ruins and is starting a fire. Bran suggests their own fire, but Jojen rejects this and gets his way as usual. Bran, taking his turn to tell a story, shares the tale of Brandon the Shipwright, a Stark who sailed beyond the Sunset Sea. By the time the food and story are finished, dusk has deepened into darkness and the rain continues. Bran wonders how far Summer has wandered. A sudden flash of lightning illuminates the tower, startling Hodor, who cries out in fear. Then the thunder crashes, prompting Hodor to shout, "Hodor!" again, frightened by the storm. Jojen instructs Hodor to be quiet as another lightning flash startles him. At the same time, Jojen, peering out during the storm, detects armed individuals maneuvering through the village, visible briefly by lightning strikes. He reports that the group is numerous and on foot. Bran, concealing his worry, questions what they'll do if these men approach their refuge. Meera attempts to calm him, but Jojen counters that their intruders might break in either by forcing the door or using their entry route. Amidst ongoing thunder, Hodor becomes increasingly agitated and loudly repeating his name in distress. Bran yells, attempting to stop Hodor from his loud cries, but it's ineffective. Hodor's strength becomes evident as he easily pushes Meera aside, continuing to scream amid the storm. Jojen joins in, urgently telling Bran and Meera to silence him. In desperation, Bran tries to calm Hodor by reaching for his leg as he passes by, but misses. Suddenly, Hodor calms, sitting cross-legged on the floor, seemingly unaffected by another thunderclap. Meera, puzzled, asks Bran what he did. Bran denies doing anything, though internally he admits he reached out to Hodor mentally, similar to how he connects with Summer, which momentarily transformed Hodor and frightens Bran. Jojen alerts everyone to activity across the lake, thinking he saw a man pointing towards their tower. Bran trying to muster courage as Eddard Stark's son and suggests that the figures might be allies like the Umbers or other northern clans, or possibly even members of the Night's Watch. Bran, however, is struck by another thought. He asserts that even if they wanted to approach, the armed men couldn't reach the tower without a boat or knowledge of the hidden causeway. Meera affectionately ruffles Bran's hair, praising his insight and agreeing that their pursuers won't be able to navigate it in the dark and rain. As Jojen grimly notes that the night will pass, implying potential threats by morning. Bran transitions into his warg state, shedding his human skin and emerging as Summer in the rainy outdoors. Satisfied from a recent deer meal, yet uneasy under the storm, he spots a man moving clumsily nearby. Summer stealthily avoids the man, listening to the humans and sensing their palpable tension in the air. A Storm of Swords, Chapter 41. Jon V. Still wet from recent rainfall, Jon and Ygritte see an old round tower, its stones nearly swallowed by thick green moss. Ygritte questions if a king was responsible for building such a stone structure. Jon clarifies that it was simply the locals who once resided there. Jon knows the villagers and holdfast in the new gift, which once paid taxes in goods and labor to support the Night's Watch, are mostly abandoned now. Ygritte remarks on the folly of abandoning such a stronghold, to which Jon replies that it's merely a tower house where a minor lord once lived with his family and a few loyal men. In times of danger, they would light a beacon from the tower's roof. He mentions that Winterfell has towers thrice as large, but she seems skeptical about humans building so high without the aid of giants. Jon recalls the legends of how Brandon the Builder was assisted by giants to build Winterfell. Instead, he tells her of a tower in Old Town that surpasses the wall in height, though he can tell she doubts him. Jon imagines showing her Winterfell, its glass gardens, and its grand hall, hoping to share its beauty and history with her. The dream is appealing to Jon, but he knows Winterfell will never be his to share. It belongs to Robb, the king in the north. Jon labels himself a bastard, oathbreaker, and spy. Amid these thoughts, Ygritte suggests that perhaps they could return and live in the tower after the looming conflicts. He knows that after implies a future following the war and the wildlings' breach of the wall. Jon recalls his father discussing plans to establish new lords in the empty holdfast as a defense against wildlings. This strategy would require the Night's Watch to give up a significant portion of the gift, but Jon's uncle Benjen had thought the Lord Commander might be persuaded if these new lordlings contributed taxes to Castle Black instead of Winterfell. Lord Eddard had always considered this a dream for a more peaceful time, doubting that the promise of land would attract settlers with winter approaching, a dream for spring. Jon reflects on the possibility that had winter passed more swiftly and spring arrived sooner, his father might have chosen him to manage one of the towers. However, with Lord Eddard dead and his uncle Benjen missing, the plan to create a protective shield of lordships is unlikely to materialize. Ygritte points out the absence of residents. Jon blames wildling raiders for driving the inhabitants away. She retorts that if the original settlers truly valued the land, they would have defended it instead of fleeing. Jon suggests that perhaps they grew wary of the constant threat, tired of securing their homes against raiders like Rattleshirt, and wary of losing their harvests and valuables. He mentions that moving was a simpler choice. Ygritte accuses Jon and his people of being the real thieves, arguing that they stole the world and built the wall to exclude the free folk. She passionately describes how lands and resources were claimed by kings and lords, restricting ownership where there was once freedom, sharply criticizing the societal structures that label her people as thieves. She asserts that unlike those who kneel and submit, at least a thief must possess courage, cunning, and speed. Jon notes that notorious figures like Hama and the Bag of Bones don't just steal necessities like food, but also kidnap women regardless of the season. Ygritte defends this practice, claiming she'd prefer being chosen by a strong raider over being given away to a weak man by her father. Jon questions how she could be sure she'd like the raider, especially if he were despicable. Ygritte asserts that a man capable of capturing her would have to be fast, wise, and brave, traits she admires and believes would be passed on to their children. Wanting her to see his point, Jon playfully suggests a scenario where the raider might be unhygienic and foul-smelling, to which Ygritte responds she'd simply force him to wash. She dismisses the idea of men smelling sweet like flowers, indicating her preference for more rugged qualities. As they banter, Jon continues to probe the dangers of her logic, asking what she would do if the raider was abusive or excessively drunk. He emphasizes his point by tightening his grip on her wrist, but Ygritte confidently replies that she would kill a man if he mistreated her, asserting once more that Jon knows nothing about her ways. She then quickly frees herself from his grasp, demonstrating her ability and resolve. Jon acknowledges that Ygritte is thoroughly a wildling, a fact that sometimes slips his mind during their lighter, intimate moments. However, their differences become starkly evident when they discuss their worlds. Ygritte asserts Mance Rayder will drive out the southern kneelers. Jon quickly checks if the Magna of Then can overhear them before quietly expressing his doubt to Ygritte, stating that Mance cannot win the war. Ygritte, ever defiant, insists on the fighting prowess of the Free Folk, to which Jon responds that while he does not doubt their courage, discipline often prevails over sheer bravery in battle. Jon says, in the end, Mance will fail as all the kings beyond the wall have failed before him, and when he does, you'll die, all of you. Ygritte had looked so angry he thought she was about to strike him. All of us, she said. You too, you're no crow now, Jon Snow. I swore you weren't, so you better not be. She pushed him back against the trunk of a tree and kissed him, full on the lips, right there in the midst of the ragged column. Jon heard Grigg the goat urging her on. Someone else laughed. He kissed her back despite all that. When they finally broke apart, Ygritte was flushed. You're mine, she whispered. Mine as I'm yours, and if we die, we die. But first, we'll live. Yes, his voice was thick. She grinned at that, showing Jon the crooked teeth that he had somehow come to love. Wildling to the bone, he thought again, with a sick, sad feeling in the pit of his stomach. He wondered what Ygritte would do if she knew his heart. Would she betray him if he sat her down and told her that he was still Ned Stark's son, and a man of the Night's Watch? He hoped not, but he dare not take that risk. Too many lives depended on him somehow reaching Castle Black before the Magna. Jon and his group make a stealthy descent from the wall at the abandoned graveyard, navigating through collapsed steps. Led by Styr, they pass only a few inhabited villages and isolated round towers. Their march through the cold, wet hills and windy plains is solitary, leaving them unwatched and unseen. He recalls the half-hand's instructions to blend in with the wildlings, but despite his efforts, the Thenns remain suspicious and watch him closely, making escape impossible. Each day after marching, the Magna of Then questions Jon sharply about the personnel and fortifications of Castle Black. Jon carefully navigates these interrogations, lying where possible and pretending ignorance at times, aware that Grigg the Goat and Eric's knowledge of the area forces him to tread cautiously to avoid exposure through an obvious lie. However, the reality of Castle Black's vulnerabilities weigh heavily on Jon. The fortress lacks substantial defenses beyond the wall itself. The garrison is also weakened. The old bear had led 200 men away on his ranging, and of the 400 remaining at Castle Black, most are non-combatants like builders and stewards. The Thenns are disciplined warriors, chosen by Mance Rayder for their prowess. In contrast, blind Maester Aemon, one-armed Donald Noy, young recruits and Bowen Marsh will face them. Jon fears that if the Magna of Thenn surprises Castle Black, it will lead to a massacre. Trapped and constantly watched, Jon struggles to find a way to warn his brothers. He is also torn about Ygritte. He cannot bring her along if he escapes, yet leaving her might put her in danger of retribution from the Magna for his actions. They share sleeping skins each night, with Ygritte's presence becoming a deep-seated part of him. Her scent, her touch, her very essence both a source of his happiness and heartache. The Thenns, speaking mostly the Old Tongue, rarely interact with Jon, unlike Jarl's raiders with whom he unintentionally becomes familiar. These include the lean, quiet Eric, the sociable Grigg the Goat, and others. Jon tries to stay detached, but ends up learning more about the wildlings than he'd like. He hears about their romantic interests, Grigg's aspirations to visit the Isle of Faces, and humorous tales. One of them even dreams that their child will be born in what he thinks is a castle, but are actually just simple watchtowers. As the day progresses, clouds gather, signaling a storm. Grigg the Goat suggests a nearby village for shelter, and the Magna, Styr, quickly agrees. They reach the abandoned village beside a lake in the midst of a raging storm, well after dark. Many of the structures have crumbled. Whenever lightning illuminates the sky, he notices a stone tower on an island in the middle of the lake, inaccessible without a boat. Eric scouts ahead, and they see the glow of a fire at the inn's chimney, indicating they are not alone. Tension rises as a horse neighs and shouts are heard. Corran's words echo in Jon's mind about blending in with the wildlings. However, Eric soon reports that the threat is minimal, just an old man and his horse. The Magna issues orders in the Old Tongue, directing 20 Thenns to form a defensive ring around the village. They easily take the man by surprise. 2 Thenns are sifting through the old man's possessions. Walking from the scene, Jon remembers Styr's orders at Greyguard were explicit. Any locals they encounter must be executed immediately to prevent alarms. Corran's words echo in his mind again: ride with them, eat with them, fight with them, and remain passive while an old man's life is brutally ended. Jon finds a sheltered spot under the remains of a wall by the lake, where Ygritte joins him. He points out a tower across the lake. Ygritte mentions that some Thenns heard noises, possibly shouts from the island, which they speculate could be ghosts due to the Holdfast's eerie appearance. Jon playfully proposes investigating, claiming they couldn't get much wetter. Ygritte laughs off his idea of swimming in the storm, teasing him about using it as a ploy to see her undressed. Jon retorts jokingly, questioning her swimming ability, confident about his own skills learned in Winterfell's moat. Ygritte jests back, claiming she's part fish, to which Jon humorously responds that she has too many harps. He then suggests they could walk to the tower, prompting a skeptical reaction from Ygritte about walking on water. Before he can explain, a lightning bolt striking the lake interrupts them, briefly turning night into day and startling Ygritte with its thunderous sound. After the thunder fades and darkness returns, Jon asks Ygritte if she saw anything unusual atop the tower. She mentions seeing something yellow, and Jon explains this place as Queen's Crown. The tower, barely visible in the night, prompts Ygritte to ask if a queen lived there. Jon recounts the story he learned from Old Nan and Maester Luwin. The tower was a brief resting place for Queen Alysanne, wife of Queen Jaehaerys the Conciliator, known as the Old King. He describes how Jaehaerys, then young and newly crowned, traveled the realm extensively, visiting Winterfell with his queen, 6 dragons, and many courtiers. While the king discussed affairs with the Warden of the North, meanwhile, the queen, feeling restless, flew her dragon, Silverwing, north to the Wall, stopping at this village. The villagers later painted their holdfast top gold to commemorate the queen's visit, resembling her golden crown. Ygritte mentions she hasn't laid eyes on a dragon, and Jon explains that the last dragons died over 100 years ago, but Queen Alysanne's visit occurred before their extinction. Ygritte recognizes the name, and Jon tells her that Alysanne was known as Good Queen Alysanne, noting that one of the Wall's castles was renamed Queensgate in her honor after her visit, formerly known as Snowgate. Ygritte jests that if Alysanne was so good, she would have dismantled the wall. Internally, Jon reflects on the wall's purpose, protecting the realm from the others and from wildlings like Ygritte. He begins to share a memory of a dwarf friend who dreamt of dreams, but he is abruptly interrupted by a Thenn calling out his name. The Magnar summons him. As Jon stands, Ygritte rises to join him, causing Styr's disapproval, but she asserts her freedom to come and go as she pleases. Jon finds the Magnar, Styr, standing under a tree growing through the common room, where the captive old man kneels encircled by weapons. As Jon approaches, the old man remains silent. Styr orders Jon to end the man's life. The captive meets Jon's gaze, leaving Jon to wonder if the man recognizes his Night's Watch attire beneath the dim firelight. He then draws Longclaw, rain washing over the steel. He recalls Qhorin Halfhand's warning that fire, while life-sustaining, can also bring death north of the wall. Here in the Gift, though, where the Night's Watch and Winterfell offer protection, a man should be free to light a fire without fear of death. Styr commands Jon to kill the captive, who remains silent. Jon remembers Qhorin's command, yet this old man hadn't resisted, he was merely unfortunate. Jon knows that nothing he does now can save the men from the Thenns. As the old man's pleading eyes meet his, Jon feels overwhelmed. The Magnar's suspicious watch pressures him further. Memories of his father executing a deserter with Valyrian steel flash through his mind. Ygritte urges Jon to kill the old man. She compares the situation to when Jon killed Orell, who was also just sitting by a fire, emphasizing that Jon had intended to kill her as well until he realized she was a woman. Jon protests, saying it was different because they were enemy sentries. Refusing to kill the old man, Jon faces opposition from Styr, who insists on obedience. Jon defiantly responds that Styr only commands Thenns, not free folk. Styr retorts, dismissing Jon and Ygritte as mere crows. In a swift reaction, Ygritte draws her knife, strides towards the old man, and kills him herself. She then throws the bloody knife at Jon's feet, accusing him of knowing nothing. As tension escalates, the Magnar utters something in the old tongue, which Jon suspects could be an order to kill him on the spot, though he remains uncertain of the actual command. Suddenly, a violent lightning bolt strikes from the air, hitting the lake's tower with a dazzling blue-white glow. In the chaos of a lightning strike, Jon is momentarily blinded, but spots a shadow moving swiftly right before a chilling shriek fills the air. A Thenn falls victim, his throat savagely torn open. As darkness returns, confusion erupts with sounds of curses and agony. Men are being killed. For a fleeting moment, Jon imagines it's his direwolf ghost who has leaped the wall. Another flash of lightning reveals a grey wolf standing over Dell, dark blood staining its jaws. As darkness swallows the scene again, the Thenns desperately jab their spears at the elusive wolf. Amid the mayhem, a horse, spooked by the scent of blood, rears and kicks furiously. Clutching Longjaw, Jon realizes the uproar provides a critical opportunity to act. In the ensuing turmoil, Jon swiftly incapacitates one attacker who is distracted by the wolf, bypasses another, and strikes at a third. Amid the confusion, he discerns someone shouting his name, but cannot discern if it's Ygritte or the Magnar. A Thenn grappling a horse fails to notice Jon, who uses Longclaw to slice the Thenn's calf. As the wildling collapses, the horse panics and bolts. As Jon seizes the horse's mane to hoist himself up, the horse kicks violently, connecting with a Thenn's head with a fatal crunch. As they race away, Jon doesn't try to control the horse, focusing solely on clinging to her back. They dash through wet, swampy ground, rain, and thunder. He worries that a misstep from the horse could be fatal. Gradually, the shouts of pursuit fade and fall silent behind him. Later, when the rain ceases, Jon finds an arrow lodged deeply in his leg. Attempts to remove it cause intense pain, forcing him to stop. His memories of the earlier chaos recall a grey direwolf. Jon wonders if his brother Robb had returned to the north. Jon climbs off the horse and treats the wound. He cleans the arrow, noting its possibly grey or white fleshing, and wonders if Ygritte had aimed for him or the horse as he fled. Reflecting on the situation, he acknowledges the fortunate misdirection of the arrow to his leg rather than his horse. Jon locates the Ice Dragon constellation and steers the horse north toward the Wall and Castle Black. He reassures himself that he is returning home, yet feels empty.